Hey everyone, thanks for joining again. This is our third episode. I don't know, I brought the best. So I look at it. My friend Bianca Vivion. I'm not even sure if you go by your last name anymore.
No,
Bianca Vivion.
finally.
We're not going with the last name anymore. But just to truly put her into perspective would be like a fool's errand. She is a writer, but I'll try anyway. She's a writer. She is a artist. She is a I don't even know if you call yourself a podcaster, but Ask Viv is a like I think it's just what would you call that, a podcast? Let's call it a
It's
podcast.
a podcast. It's a podcast.
She's
It's
a podcaster, writer, columnist for the New York Times. I mean, used to be an old banker, I think, as well on Wall Street. I mean, there's not much that you haven't done or can't do. And just to really be honest, you are someone who gives me joy in life knowing that you exist. You are the hope for the future. You are our future president whenever you choose to take that horrible job. You are someone who, in my opinion, is one of the guiding lights and voices of this generation that we're currently in, and one of the strongest hopeful figures in my life, period. Point blank. You've been there for years. You are presently, and you will be into the future. So Bianca, I'll make you do your introduction.
oh my god, that and surpass that. I'm usually not an eloquent, but I'm like, that's so good. I don't know if I'll ever be president. If I'd have to be really bored.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. You'd be doing something for us.
ghetto job. I would love to be commander in chief, but I don't know. I yeah, I ventured towards fascism in my own business, like of like my way or the highway. I tell people that all the time. So I don't know if putting a country in my hands, but I mean the best. I mean well, but I'm not really for democracy in my day-to-day life. So I don't know if I
And this
not president, not president of the United States, but maybe like if I marry into a smaller West Indian hierarchy, like a hierarchical kingdom,
yeah.
I rule it well. I feel
And
like
as you can tell, like this is gonna be an uncommon conversation because Bianca's an uncommon person. You just have ideas that I genuinely believe are ahead of their time because you're not following the zeitgeist. You're someone who truly knows her history. Honestly, you know her story, you know your story, and you're making it as you move along. I think there's something about someone who reads and is aware of the past who could dictate and have more meaning in the present and can know where the future is headed. And you've always been an embodiment of that, of just knowing. You're one of the probably the most well-read person I know. Period.
I'm always reading because I don't want to get caught in a position where someone asks me how I know.
Yeah.
It's so rare that people ask how do you know, because I feel like we live in a time where people make extremely unqualified statements, and they're just always making unqualified statements that have no sort of historical standing. And I just never I'm not one of those people that weaponizes information against other people. So I won't say like, oh, in 1475, like such and such, but I would, if ever. It's always me like arming myself constantly to be like, if ever someone asks me like, how do you know? And I do very rarely, but get into like some sort of kind of ideological debate, which I never, people that love to argue like tend to not really have that many facts like on hand.
Yeah.
But I do a lot of research just in case. It's always just in case someone asks me, how do I know? So I'm always reading. And I'm like, I think that that's probably the thing I like the most about myself, is that you can never be like, what are you reading? And I'm like, nothing. Like, I'm always reading.
Exactly. Always staying informed. And it's interesting that you say that, like you're trying to arm yourself for this potential like ideological debate that you may have, because I feel like nowadays people aren't even, we're at a point, and I hope this is not like hyperbole, but I feel like we're almost like post facts, post truth. I think we've kind of all fell into this thing of like my truth shit, like what actually is doesn't matter. And I get why, but it's almost to the point where it's like what is slowly eroding because, top down structures when it comes to information, the general mass media out of hand, people just creating their truths as they go along, the like the viral nature of like some sort of like easier more bull BS, probably conspiratorial sort of information that tends to get disseminated. I really feel like we're at a point right now where everyone's just existing in the reality that they're choosing to create for themselves, which I understand can be a good thing and can be a bad thing, but we're just losing those sort of like social ties where it's like, well, we all believe this, you know, where this is commonly accepted as the truth. I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, but it is something that I'm seeing. It seems like it's harder to get people together these days. And when you do, it's like a strong level of groupthink and like tribalism that tends to be like forming when those people do get together. It's like you can't even be, you know, within a group of like mixed-minded people anymore without there being some sort of friction. Like someone says one thing and it's like, what? You have like a divergent opinion? Like, yeah, I don't believe that. Yeah, I don't. Is that something that's fun or no?
The thing that, I don't remember who told me this, but I think it was actually a propagandist, a news propagandist, someone that worked at CNN said, heat sells faster than light. And it's something that when people are trying to survive, when they're searching for heat and food and water and just basic necessities, the truth becomes secondary or tertiary to whoever can provide basic survival. And when you see like large fascist regimes that come into fruition, they often do so by offering people bread and food and water, like very basic necessities, and then they give you the truth to accompany that heat that they sell you. So light is sold with truth. And if you can't give people heat, then trying to provide them light, and I feel like this is actually why I consider myself an intellectual, but I'm not an academic. And when I was at Columbia, a lot of it was that it was so much theory going on and a lot of Black liberation theory, but it couldn't speak to the basic survival of people. It couldn't tell people how they were going to feed their families and how they were going to maintain, which is always in capitalism, 99% of the population's most immediate concern. And so for me, when I think of fixing issues, I think of what charity can do, what generosity can do, what putting in actual stable survival mechanisms for people so that then when you talk about truth, you're not just talking about it in an abstract or poetic or intangible way, because it becomes useless. And I think that that's really what the point was in creating like such inequity and such an unequal system, was to create a level of obsession with survival to the point where no one can really be concerned about truth, or the truth is whatever is what sells immediately or what makes people feel comfortable for the moment. And it's not based in historical fact. It's not based in any kind of real structural analysis. It's just based on feeling. Because you find that people that are living at the whim of their own hunger or their own basic needs are also living at the mercy of their feelings. It's like all one and the same. It's just, how do I feel today? How do I feel? So for me, it's you can't really talk about truth if you're not also talking about the facts of the way that people are living. And I feel like people either do one or the other. They're either concerned with the capital T truth as far as belief, or they're concerned with the capital F facts as far as like structural analysis when you're talking about communist and Marxist. But you have to meet somewhere in the middle where people with what's real, like not what's factual or what's true, but what's real. And I'm always about what's real. That's my in between. I'm looking for what's real.
I think that's kind of where we like probably have an overlap, and maybe the reason why we've like first connected to one another, just like trying to find that I don't know, that real shit, honestly. Like, and speaking about that,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I've been having some of these like realized heavy conversations about just like life and politics and existential like macro level issues, and honestly, I'm fucking tired of it. You know, maybe I'm really just tired of talking about big issues. Like, I want to talk about simple, important things to me, like love, you know, just living, food, life. Like, I really just want to, myself, my soul, my spirit, I just want to like get shit down back to this like life being lived level.
You know, I always want to talk about love.
Yeah, like, you know, I mean, let's talk about love, man. Because I mean, I hate to switch so strongly from where we were to begin with, but it's like, I think just in starting off, I just want to talk about love. I might even cut the fucking interview and start here, but but now I won't do that. We're gonna keep on flowing. But you know, how's love been in life from whatever perspective you want to take it?
um, you know what? I'm at such a critical impasse now of trying to figure out how to love without suffering. I feel like that has actually been my goal for the fall. It's like the goal I set because um, at one point I was trying to learn charitable love. I feel like that's what the last 2 years of my life were really learning how to give myself in a vulnerable way to my friends, not really men, because that was something that actually came naturally to me to be like, here, take me, like, handle me, protect me. But it didn't come so naturally to the people that I actually intrinsically trusted the most, that who I was the least suspicious of. So I was like, give away more of yourself, more of my space. I wasn't like big on like tactile affection. Like I wouldn't touch people. Like I've been learning to like embrace my friends and hug my friends and be with my friends and be present. And that was a lot of the last 2 or 3 years for me. And now I feel like I'm just learning to love without suffering. And that's come a lot with familial love,
Mhm.
of like, I have such a sense of duty and such a sense of just obligatory duties that come from kinship. And like, what do I owe my family? You know, questions like that. What do I owe my family? What do I owe lovers and romance? And now just trying to figure out how to pay those dues without suffering. Because I feel like for the longest, I was so obsessed with that sense of duty of like, what does it mean to be a good daughter? What does it mean to be a good sister? What does it mean to be a good friend? And I was really, really doing well, but I was doing well poorly because I wasn't considering myself. So it's like, if you do good without self-maintenance, then you're at best doing well poorly. And that's what I was doing. So now what I'm doing, it's just a lot of self-consideration and a lot of, again, like, let me see things for what they are. I want to see what's real. I don't want to be in any kind of narrative about myself or about what's required. I just want to see things as they are and face them accordingly. So that's where I'm at in pretty much every kind of love, is just like, what is real. There was this guy that I had this like romantic fling with this summer, and it was kind of funny because he kept being on this let's just be friends. And at one point, like, we were laying in my bed and he was just like, but what about friendship? And I just looked at him and I was like, that's not what's real. I was like, that's just not real. And it really bothered me. I really just said, like, that's not what's real. I said, whatever is real, it's probably more convoluted and complex, and that makes you anxious and frustrated because it's never going to be a relationship and it's not friendship, but friendship is just not real. And I was like, you need to just get off of that because I just can't live in that irreality with you. I'm just all about like, yeah, like talking to my sisters, like what I can and can't do for them. It's just constantly, I'm like, that's not what's real. Like, just come back to reality. And I used to escape it because it's nicer living in our version and our narrative of things. It's nicer living in just a different place, like where things are better and like things make sense and they're very clear cut. But I face what's real, and it actually is always the simplest thing to do, is be like, until like the truth is hard because the truth changes, but the truth is the only thing that's real. And if we're not living in the truth, we're living a lie. And I just spent too much time doing that. I don't know if that is really any question about love, but that's where I'm at.
And that's where you're at.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm living.
Can't deny that. I think from our perspective on love, it's been like, last year was like it was a battle of love, a battle of like trying to produce something for myself, which was like a form of self-love that was really difficult. And, you know, doing the book, and then, you know, work was fucking insane. Work is still fucking insane.
Yeah.
And, you know, but at the same time, trying to start a new love at the same time, and really noticing very clearly when I was making, you know, a choice, even before certain choices were made. I'm like, I know what I'm going to choose ahead of time. So let me just be honest. Like, it may not be you in this moment. I may be a horrible person. I may be imbalanced. I may be, this, and that. I may get neurotic. I may have a temper. It's just like, it just understanding priorities when it comes to self-love versus, like love of like companionship. That was a really difficult moment for me. I think it was like two ends. What's more important? I won't say what's more important, but what I was prioritizing honestly was myself. I was prioritizing the next 50 years of me versus the next potential, who knows, of someone else, and me and someone else. And I realized that looking back, I wish I could have had more grace and balance throughout it. But that may just been that I just accepted that was probably the lesson that I need to learn. This year has been about trying to extend the same grace that I was given to that to that person, to that partner, because I was definitely held down, and I got to make sure that I'm doing the same. But it's really been for me like an eye-opening situation, like being in a situation where I'm in the first, I would say, mature relationship where there's been conflict and there's been resolution, and and there was more conflict and more resolution, and there wasn't this sort of like giving up factor to it, like you were talking about, like realizing the reality of things. Like, this is where we are. We can either get better or we can break up, or we can get better or
and that's I mean, I think that it's just beautiful that you're building something that lends towards permanence, because that's really why what I had this summer, I was like, this is never going to become a relationship, is because I was only looking for things that lend towards permanence. I mean, it's like, I think that for so long I was so afraid of forever for a really long time. I had a mom that was married. She's on her third marriage. It's like her final marriage. But for me, I thought of like any kind of real commitment as impermanence was such an impossibility in my childhood mind and my childhood household, that I just used to be like, I want to love. I used to tell people.
Let me tell you before you tell me. You want to find a love for a person you wanted to find a great love for every person.
I knew you were going to quote me on it.
It was something else. I'm like, when you told me a couple years ago,
I wanted a great love for
too.
every person I was.
I was like, that's me too. But say it again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what it was. I wanted a great love for every woman that I was in life. Then I grew up and wanted to be one woman. And that's what it was, is that I was tired of going through changes. I said, it's like the more religious I became, the deeper into Islam that I got over the last few years, it was that I was tired of going through changes. I was tired of believing one thing and then believing another. Everything was up for discussion. Everything, like what I wanted to do, where I wanted to live, who I wanted to be. I was like in all of these vicissitudinous changes all the time. And it was making me sick at a point. It was just stressing me out because I couldn't tell what's real. Because when things are always changing, when there's no fundamental truth, I don't know who I am exactly. I don't know why I'm here exactly. I don't know what I want exactly. Then of course you want a different lover every day of the week. For every time you put on a different character, costume. And I liked that costume, and I liked changing those costumes. And I was like, oh, today is the baller, tomorrow's the poet and the preacher, and I had, and that was a beautiful thing I would say about girlhood, is that it allotted me that. But becoming a woman and seeing myself clearly for who I am, and realizing that none of those costumes were actually fundamentally who I was, I can just have this one person and find somebody who's going to love this one person for as long as humanly possible, because I was sick of going through changes. And I think I was fooling myself of even telling myself that I didn't desire impermanence. I just had to come to terms with the fact that seeing my childhood home and feeling like it was an impossibility, but there was so many things in my childhood home that felt like financial security felt like an impossibility. Living in a house for more than 3 years felt like an impossibility. So these were things that the more I vested them in my own life, the more I realized that I was just dealing with a specter or a ghost of my childhood, and it wasn't what was real. Like, it wasn't what I really wanted. And so I'm not doing what I was doing at 21, where every time I bend the corner, I'm like looking for love. I'm like, is this him? Is this him? Is that him? Which was so me. It was so me. And Harlem gave me that, to be like there's a fine black man on every other street. I was like, is this him? Is this him? Is this him? And as soon as I was over one, I'd be like, all right, Where's another one? Where's the next one? Where's it gonna be? Is it Paris? Is it Milan? And I'm just right here with myself now. I'm right here with myself, and I'm not waiting on anybody. I'm not waiting on anybody because when that person walks in, I'm not expecting them to walk out. I'm like, when you view something as lending towards permanence, if you're like, this will be the next 50 years of my life, it actually slows down the rush to find something. Because you're like, you're gonna find something, and then I know watching my other partnered friends who are really trying, it's like, it's gonna be a long ass time, and it's gonna be days that are just like, oh, get out. So I'm just like, I'm enjoying myself.
As you should, man. Because I found, during my single moments or that time period, like that I even read about in the book, it was just like I literally there was, and there's still a lust in the back of my mind. There is nothing like being single and being content and being happy in yourself. There's a power and there's a possibility in that is, it's not as great as love, but it's like the second best thing to it. Like there's just something about like not knowing, as you said, who that person's going to be, but knowing that when they come and you've made the right decisions and that person is like fit into your life so well, that's the beauty, but everything else is just frivolous. So that's how I saw it. Like I was looking for the best for me and not the next great thing or the next good thing that was going to leave. Because I don't know, there's some filter in my brain where it's like, if you're not exactly right, you just won't even be registered as a possible match, and
I was tired of living a cliche. I mean, the thing is that women, to have every life experience learned through romance is just it's rife with cliche for women. Like men in male, the genre Bildungsromane, coming of age, it's a German word that means coming of age. It's in that genre, men go out, they travel, they fight animals, they meet shamans, they become sheep herders, they trade goods and they fight wars and they become sailors on boats, and they have a real sense of adventure, calamity and doom, and picking themselves up and going broke and getting rich and betting everything on a gamble and losing it all and winning it back. Like, women learn everything that they learn through heartbreak and through leaving, goings and comings. It was like the whole story of my life was told through like my mom, she used to tell me, like, if I ever had a movie, it would be called All My Sweethearts Live in Harlem. And like, she loved that because it's like her life. It's like, you're telling your life through a series of other people who I was looking for the things that were special about me in these characters. I would date an artist and be like, wow, I'm such a great artist. Like I went through I wrote that essay, Danger of Being a Muse, and it was all about dating a really terrible artist to realize that I was an artist. Dating like somebody who was not entrepreneurial enough or like a hustler, just to realize like I'm a hustler, like that's an intrinsic part of myself. And I said, what are the other ways to learn self in life? And for me, it was like giving myself to other people that were not lovers. I became a teacher this summer. I taught an entire workshop, and it's like being a teacher, I learned some things about myself. And it's like lending myself to friendship and becoming a real friend. I learned some things about myself. Becoming religious and abstaining from certain things and like creating a sense of discipline rather than, I dated a bartender, as you know, and it was me, all this liquor. I don't even like liquor. I don't even drink. And it's like, why did I go through all that to learn something that I knew before I was 21? I was tired of living that cliche. And I feel like women, we're taught to feel like failures when romance goes wrong. But I wanted better failures. I wanted to like build an empire business and then bankrupt it. Like I want to have white man adventures. I didn't want everything to be like the nigga down the street's not acting right. I was tired of it. I was like, it's got to get more interesting than this.
It's so crazy that you say all of that, because it's like there's so many like novels or things that you read that just all are framed around, like you said, men going on adventures and women waiting for those men to return.
Yeah.
And it's like, really? Do you think a woman just has no other like aspect or prospect in life than just waiting for your ass to return? And vice versa. Because I mean, this is how things are flipping these days. I feel like men are now in an uncomfortable space that women are the ones that are being adventurous. Women are the ones being the primary breadwinners, and men are the ones that are at home waiting. And I'm just finding that interesting to see how
exactly. I've been all over the world. I've been to every continent except for Australia and
no. Let them know.
Like, I've literally been everywhere, and I've done quite literally everything. Like, you know, like day trading, and I lived on a boat in the middle of a jungle for weeks on end, like studying freshwater dolphins. I have so many. I was that character I had been looking for. I'd been looking to marry that person. And I woke up one day and I'm like, what if I am the person that I've needed all these years? That I had been convincing myself for so long. And this was not just romance, this was business too. That there was someone out there that held the key to my future. And it's like, it's the Aaliyah story, you know, it's the Naomi Campbell, like one day I'm gonna go and walk into a mall and like somebody's gonna point me out and be like, that's a star. And like they were gonna change my life and like fly me off to some place and turn me into who I was really supposed to be. And while that's a beautiful dream, and for some people it really does happen like that, it discounted all that I had done on my own, like all that I had just built with these two hands. And it took me being like, that's not good enough. That's not real life. Like real life starts when somebody loves you. And I said, okay, well then what if I loved me? We'll start there. And that was the beginning of just a better novel.
It's so interesting that you say that.
Better novel.
Like, I've never, since I met you, and I met you when you were like, I mean, very young. Like, I was in Columbia when I first was like, here's my first book. What do you think about it? And I remember like that first day, I really believed, just seeing how like, you're just like, I think everybody, it's obvious at this point in the conversation, like you aren't a normal person, right? You're not a normal thinking person. You're not a normal person that processes information in the same speed as most people. Like you're just not normal in that sort of respect. And I saw that within the first like 30 minutes of meeting, like, oh, this is for someone on a different level. Having known some people who just like are on a different level, like it's easy to say that. And it's easy to admit, yo, LeBron can jump high. Yo, this woman is highly intelligent and much more than me. It's simple to say. But the fact that when I met you, I'm like, oh, this person could do anything. You could literally do anything. And I always found it interesting, having seen some of those people that you met. Always found it interesting. Always. And I don't say this with any sort of like ridicule to those men, because they were like, you know, great in their own right, I'm sure. Although I didn't know them that well. I never thought that these men, any of them, were going to be enough for you. Never. I didn't even meet all of them. I'm just simply saying, I was like, this is not going to be the one. Like, really how you just explained them was exactly how I saw them. There were people that you realized who you were through, but they never were going to be the ones that held you down. I always saw you, and I get life and love is about compromise to a degree, but I saw you compromising yourself while around them. Because it's like, I know Bianca. When I'm around you and them, I don't see the same. I see whether it was 95%, 90%, 80%, or 99%, it doesn't matter. I just knew you pure, uncut. And every time that you were with them, I felt like I saw a little bit lesser grade, and hopefully that's not like insulting to any of them or you.
It's not insulting.
That's how it felt to me. Like,
it's not insulting because the key.
Well, let me say what I'm saying. Like, I felt like you were doing it for them.
Yeah.
I realized you were doing it for you.
Yeah.
Like it was like.
Yeah. I mean, well, the thing is that I've learned something since my last like real full-fledged relationship. I've learned so much. And I've learned, you know, the thing is, and people hate that I say this, I'm just so Muslim, is like, there is actually really good qualities to submission in relationships. There is, like, as a woman, because I find, especially with Black men, and I primarily date Black men, have primarily dated Black men, they're emasculated so often at the workplace, in life, just in life, that like a man, there is something that a man needs to be a man. Like, I know people, oh my God, like, don't write me. Don't go on my website.
Don't write me either, because I unfortunately.
Don't ask me to elaborate. I'm not going to do it. But I found in real practice that a man needs to be a man. And like, and that was part of it. I did it haphazardly when I was younger. I did it on a hunch of being like, just let him be him. Like that, it's all good. Because honestly, if you trust somebody with your life, if you trust somebody with your personhood, it's not a huge compromise. It's not like submit to every man. You just have to submit to the man that you're with to be like, you can be a man. Because I enjoy being a woman in like the most cliche, heteronormative, probably patriarchal, sexist terms. Like, I just enjoy the fuck out of it. So I'm like, be a man. Like, please be a man. And if you're a West Indian man, be a West Indian man. But yeah, I think that at the time I was just young. And you know, the thing that I realized is that I'm finally giving myself permission to be young. I'll be 24 in a month, October 7th, if you want to write me on that. But when you, like, I was accomplishing history. And when you're accomplishing history and when you're like moving at a light year speed and doing things that are, it was incredible to me, the things I was doing. Like, people thought that it was just like, oh, it's easy, but I would be like, whoa, shit, like that is kind of crazy constantly. And when you're besting yourself in your career and you have a higher level of wisdom that seems to come from outside of yourself, and when you are like getting a bunch of information and achieving this elite education that no one in my family or neighborhood or community had ever done anything like that, I was not giving myself permission to just have young love. And when you try to stretch temporary young love into like permanent forever love, especially because I was dating older men, I was compromising so much of what was the best of my youth. And I can genuinely say, like, I wasted a lot of time just trying to make my romantic self catch up with the rest of my mind and my career and everything else. Like, I was living like, I don't know, it's like my career is in like dog years. I had like a 42-year-old's career, and then I was trying to have like 21-year-old romance, but with all the wisdom of a 42-year-old. But the thing about romance is that it's one of the only types of knowledge that is completely experiential. Nobody that has not been in love can tell you shit about being in love. If you have not loved, you can't talk about it. And it's actually why a lot of the men that I was with, they bothered me because they barred themselves off from love, and then they would try to tell me shit about how it worked. And I'm like, you don't dive in, you don't try, you don't experiment, you don't make yourself subject to the humiliation that love is bound to bring. So that's actually one thing, as old as at your big age, you can't tell me shit about. And so now I'm like, I'm glad that I had that experience because I can see love for what it is not, having experienced it. But that's the thing. Like, I shrunk myself, or I wouldn't even say I shrunk myself. It's such a cliche. I would say that I misfigured myself. I deformed myself. I created this deformed thing that I was just like, what do people love when they love you? That was a question that I spent too long on. What do people love when they love you? Because what the world loved about me, what my friends loved about me, what everyone except for these men loved about me was that sense of, you can do anything. You can make miracles happen. You are overwhelmingly able. And for these men, it was like, that is fucking terrifying. And so I was having this sense of like, vertigo of looking out in the world and being like, but they love it, and then coming home and being like, it's too much. But I spent too much time looking on the outside. I could not look within. I didn't spend enough time on self-reflection. I didn't spend enough time. I just didn't spend enough time on myself, asking myself those questions. I spent it now though. I spent the last 2 years, I spent it now.
And it's funny that you say, like, you felt like people loved you for your ability to get shit done, like you're like bigger in a sense. I think what I always was like, of course, that's something that's impressive about you, but what I always truly genuinely appreciate about you is that you just always gave a fuck. Like, your heart. You know what I mean? For as like brilliant as you are, the reason why I see your brilliance is because you care enough to be brilliant. You care enough to care about the issue to read about it. Not just care about it and say it, but you care about it to be educated.
I can't believe you're saying this, because
like, that's how I see you.
I can't believe you're saying this, because just the other day, the last time I was with this guy, I was laying down with him and I was reading him. I have this book club that I do with incarcerated men up in Pennsylvania, and one of them wrote me a letter, and it was just the nicest, kindest letter, because I was just having an off day and they could tell. And my friend Nigel, he says, B, like, you're the most beautiful and caring person. You're so caring. And this guy that I had read this letter to, I was like, isn't that so sweet? And he's like, you're just glad that he called you beautiful. You love when men call you beautiful. And I said, you know what I love is that he called me caring. Because you know what is really crazy is that I grew up in a household that a lot of the people around me made me feel like I was an uncaring person because I'm not sentimental. And it's funny because I actually care more because I don't live at the mercy of my feelings. Because I'm not a prostitute to my feelings, and men will try to gaslight you and be like, if you're not, because feelings are what are used to manipulate people. I can be genuinely, intentionally caring and eyes wide open say, I choose you, I will be here today and tomorrow, no matter how I feel. It makes me way more caring than the average person because some days I don't feel like it, and it never keeps me from not showing up.
That's the difference. And I think that's what people fail to realize. I agree with that so fucking much. Like the difference between a person that gives out of the expectation of returns and someone who gives to give is a big fucking difference.
Period.
I'm giving because I give a fuck. I can be annoyed. I can be annoyed with you. I can hate you, but I'm still gonna try to do for you because I said I would, and I give a fuck.
Because I said I would. Because I said I would, and that's another thing. It was like my word really was my bond. It was like it became my bond. It was always my bond because word for me is so important, and it's so fundamentally tied up with who I am. But it was also important because for God, like God's word is his bond. So I said, okay, it's mine too. And if I say I'm gonna do it, I don't give a fuck how I feel. Like waking up or saying it doesn't factor in. And that was a shock to a lot of people because a lot of people they just change. And they say they're gonna do something. And I grew up in a household like that where words didn't mean they didn't mean that much. Like you said you were gonna do something, you didn't follow up on it, there was no real consequence. Like it was me becoming the person I wanted to be and deciding on that. But being caring was about being careful and about like really being intentional. And yeah, it's just really funny that you say that because it's been the part of myself that I'm finally realizing like maybe I was caring all those years. Like, and people were just like, no, you're not caring because you're cold. No. Which I also realized that I'm not really that cold either.
I've never
seen I was like, somebody lied. That's been my whole year. Exactly my whole year has been somebody lied. Somebody lied.
Absolutely. I've never ever gotten that energy. If anything, you care too much. You know what I mean? Like I think that's how I perceive.
That's what people. Yeah. Anybody that actually knows me, when you care way too much, and I don't ascribe to that either. It never. Caring doesn't tax me. I feel like I always feel the most energized when I'm caring about something. I feel the most depleted when I'm apathetic. And it's funny because I feel like most people are that way and they don't understand that like actually giving yourself to causes and actions that are really aligned with who you are, what you believe, and what you desire is the most replenishing thing. You never really get tired. Like you actually really don't get tired. People can be like, oh, you get fatigued and exhausted. And it's like, okay, but sleep. Like that's just a physical.
Exactly. Like,
that's just a physical.
I mean, this is the reason why this whole entire like apparatus that we're doing right now, this whole conversation is occurring because everything in my life, other than, you know, from a work perspective, which I wouldn't even refer to this as work, this is like joy, is depleting, draining. Like it's literally, as I wrote, like trading blood and bones for rent and water. It is like soul crushing, destruction. Like the corporate world is something that when it's not for you, but you're like forced into it because just the need to pay bills and I guess being an adult and, you know, loans, student loans. I can't describe the humanity that I feel like I'm losing every single day that I'm here. And I'm making a plan, but it's beyond an ability to like cope. It really feels like I turn myself off and I go through this drone-like state of just task completion. And it's just like, it's really robotic. There is no peak, no joy, no energetic, nothing. And I must break myself from this doom. 2020 is trying me, but I will escape this doom.
You will.
And like it's doing these conversations that gives me the inspiration to keep going, keep moving forward, keep believing in the you know, the ability that there's more on the other side of this sort of struggle. And even just your last episode on Ask Viv, speaking about struggle, like talking about, you know, like people have an aversion to struggle. I feel like I haven't, but that's been at my detriment. You know, sometimes I feel like because I can take too much, I stay in things longer than I should.
Yes, Black man, period. Oh my God, you're not the only one either. It's like, for me, like I tried so many times the corporate thing, like so many times. And like my finances and like any long-term security had been at odds because I cannot sustain a job. I mean, it's because like for Black men, I think that, well, you're not one of those non-threatening Black men, like light skin with like no facial hair. That's just like you're not a Trevor Noah type. But I feel like Black men don't really understand sometimes the extent to which Black women just have such a hard time in corporate America. Like when I was working in banking, like they asked me to straighten my hair and just told me I looked wild and just would make really outlandish. And then you have the sexist remarks, like people would remark on domestic violence and like a joking fashion, just things that I was just like, this is so soul sucking. But also, I think it's because I felt such an urgency to be elsewhere all the time. I really didn't microaggressions, whatever. Like I'm proactively aggressive. Like I grew up in the hood, so I don't really give a fuck about that. And also, it was like an inside joke in my mind because actually I was just like, wow, this is. I don't know. Maybe it was my superiority complex, just being like, these people are so far beneath me that how could I ever be offended? Because I don't have any respect for you, so I don't really feel disrespected. But it was really the pull of feeling like I was supposed to be somewhere else. I'm like, these days feel like they belong to someone else, to somewhere else, to other people. And like now, when I made that decision, not now, but years ago, when I walked away from that, I was like, give your days to those things and those people. And the pull just becomes stronger and stronger. And then that becomes your work. And I feel like it's inevitable for you because you're always being pulled to something else. But it's realizing at one point, and it's not just, artists that go through this. I remember when I worked at, my last real job was at a financial tech startup. And I'll never forget the guy that founded the company. He had worked at Google and he had been working at Google all like 80 hours a week and putting his whole self into that. But he said that it bothered him that at Google, it's such a large, mammoth, gargantuan organization that's so complex that there's no big red button. Meaning like you can't at any time push a button and like everything blow up or go wrong. Meaning that like anything you can do, the most impactful things that you can do are almost like not impactful at all. And like the most dangerous things you can do are also not that impactful. It's something that lives way beyond you and above you. And he just wanted a place where he could say A plus B equals C when he did something. And eventually, like, he had to walk away from Google because he couldn't do the startup thing and the Google thing. But it was also just about seeing the fruits of your labor. And it's like that sort of isolated labor that capitalism produces where you can't see anything that you've done come to fruition in any meaningful way. And I mean, for me, that was never an option because I'm not a team player. It was not enough to just throw my idea in the bucket and then see everybody come out on the other side with a win. Like, no, I was not that girl. I was like, yeah, I've always been the Beyoncé of Destiny's Child. Let's put it that
way. There you go.
I could not physically do it. Like, I needed credit. And it's like now I'm at an also weird career point because I feel like, you ever seen the tag Marc Jacobs? That's like Marc Jacobs by Marc Jacobs featuring Marc Jacobs.
Yeah,
like,
I've seen that.
Yeah, that's my career now. It's like Bianca featuring Bianca Vivion, like on a headline. And it's nice, but it's too much. It's like, I'm looking forward to the next year of my life where it's like, oh, thank you, my team. I can't wait to be one of those Instagram bitches. Oh, shout out to my team and tag like 70.
Yeah, I want to get to that level as well. Shit, like when you get to include me.
Yeah, but it's like we're floating our own boats right now, but it's necessary. And every time that I try to be like, God, what is this? It's the nice thing about reading artist biographies is realizing that these big ass artists that you're just like, why can't I just have this kind of career? Like before the age of celebrity where people were career professionals, like, Langston Hughes was a biologist and a chemist. Like James Baldwin, he would teach random teaching jobs that he hated because he never went to college. Like so many of these people, they did so many other jobs and so many other side hustles before they ever got to a point where some of them never got to a point where their main hustle was their main hustle. But it doesn't discount the work and it doesn't make it less historically impactful. It's just like that's the nature of capitalism. It's a fucked up nature, but it's the nature we're living in now that we have.
That's why I've been so patient, is because I understand that just to do the things that I want, I don't have to be that thing 24/7. Then I think that's a luxury of the 24. It's like the period that we're living in is like, if you're like a photographer, all you do is photography 24/7. That's how you pay your bills. No, some photography could be what you do on the side. It could be a hobby. And I understand that everybody wants to make their hobby their living, but it may not be a reality for most. So I think that's what's kept me in the game, making these different things for so long. Is because it's like, I feel like there's a reality to, bills and having to pay your way through, I guess, like sustain your way through life. And then there's this want of like needing to do things that fulfill you. But at a certain point in time, I feel like I'm at a breaking point where it's really just, the scale is not even balancing out. It's like That's like the side of work is like in the fucking ground, almost 6 feet deep. And I'm just in the sky, like, let me be free, let me fly. Fuck being on the other side of the swing. I want to fly. And
Oh, yeah.
it feels like an anchor. And
It is an anchor. It is an, and I'm at the point where, I mean, even things for me that people would be like, oh, that's a dream. Like the New York Times and shit, like that was an anchor because all I ever really wanted to do for a living was be myself. Like I wanted to be like, I mean, I'm glad that at the beginning you're like, we're dropping last names because I wanted to be Cher, Oprah, Prince, Beyonce. Like I wanted to be a name that was like, oh, what do they do? Like, you know, it's always funny. Go read the Wikipedia for some, go read Beyonce's Wikipedia. Beyonce is an American singer, songwriter, actress, and philanthropist. And it's really like, that's not really who she is. Like, that's just a bunch of random bullshit titles. Like, that's just, is Beyonce a singer, songwriter, or did like Beyonce invent music? You know, like, it's basically just like trying to distill what these people, who they are as like what they do is always such a comical thing. Like, when you're reading, like even Nelson Mandela was an activist and the president of South Africa. Like, was that who Nelson Mandela was? Like, I mean, it's distillation, and so you just want to get to the point where what you do is just who you are. Like that's what like the artist really desires, to just be like their namesake, be their occupation. But it's harder than ever, and it's also because people pay people who are terrible at things so much money to do those things that the people that are good at those things, it's like harder for us to get paid what we're worth because of those people. Like having a podcast or these other things, it's like things that I make no money off of because they have to be correct, because the minute I put them in the hands of somebody else, like they're not going to be done correctly. Like somebody else could do them, literally. So I'm just like, I have to do them for free. Basically. And then like make money however I know how.
Basically. I guess it's a conversation about purpose, I guess. But man, I'm digesting what you just said because a lot of that shit hit home. In a strong way, but it's true. It's like I really genuinely believe like there is, like as you said, you want to be you. You know, you want what you do to be you, and that's why I hate doing introductions for this or anything else. I hate writing like blah 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 is a blah blah. Like that's not what the fuck I want to talk about. Nor do I care what you do. Nor I care about your accolade. Are you a person that I could get something? You know, are you a person that provides value? You know, whatever you're doing. Do you provide energy? Do you provide love? Do you provide like? To me, it's not even monetary. It's not like whatever hierarchy that you guys want to invent to make up. Does this person make me feel feel something? Are they doing something for the existence of humanity? And that's all I care about. I don't give a fuck about nothing else. And if it's through your work, through your voice, through your art, I don't care who knows you, how many followers or subscribers or whatever the fuck you got. I do not care. Do you provide an energy? Do you create a spark? Are you a part of like a good flow of humanity that gets us towards, you know, something that's elevation rather than degradation? And that's all I care about. Like everyone has a fucking story. Everyone can come on any sort of podcast or any sort of platform and turn themselves into someone that someone provided, like someone that thought they were provided some sort of value from. And that's what I'm trying to create. So I'm trying to build, you know, trying to build a space for people, not a space for, you know, professions, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, and that, you know, what's so funny is that for me, like, I'm working on this new talk show, Generational Anxiety, and the entire premise of it is that we take like older, like politicians, intellectuals, iconoclasts, and thinkers, and put them with their millennial Gen Z counterparts, like to talk. But it's not a show centered around people, like such as this. It's a show centered around ideas, and it's really about the creation of new ideas. And it's because what I feel my job is to present into the zeitgeist, into the cultural dialogue, newness, like real newness. And newness can only come through organic dialogue in an intentional fashion, because I think that really what we're going through now, the chaos of the day in 2020, is that there are so many brand new issues that people are trying to find a referential frame of mind in order to solve these problems. Like, you have a pandemic, right? And the last time there was a major global pandemic was 1918. So it's like, and then very minor, smaller epidemics in like 58, 72, and then like swine flu, bird flu, whatever. It's very difficult when people are trying to use a language from 100 plus years ago to talk about a modern problem, but you find it's almost like the immediate reactionary thing that we do with every single social instance. So you have Black Lives Matter, the immediate thing, what did people do in the civil rights movement? Boycotts, when you have a global economy or an economy that's actually not even situated in America, but almost completely situated abroad, is such a meaningless form of action in pretty much every way, and it doesn't really work. Talking about these things in a way that's always referential to the past or some kind of ism, like socialism, Marxism, communism, like people don't want to create systems of newness, they just want to be referential. And so for me, if you get brilliant people talking about ideas, then you're bound to form something new, because that's basically the only way that new ideas have ever really formed. Like that's it. It's like creating the atmosphere for that, but to also place the intention to say, let's think about this completely new, like what does it mean? Like social media, like these things that people are just like, oh, well, it was like this, or but back in the day. Also romanticizing the past, that's gotta go. Like conversations that don't romanticize the past, don't even reference things like in a oh, this is how it was back in the day, but really faces what's in front of us and says there's a potential for something new. Because the lie that's being told to everyone is that there's nothing new under the sun, and there never is going to be. But then you have an entire generation of children that's going to have to face the worst of climate change, and you're going to just tell them that there's no new ideas. Like, figure it out.
I think there's too much new right now. Like I could list. I mean, oh God, the advanced automation, genomics, gene splicing, fucking increasing. As I already said, increasing automation, but fucking asteroid farming, new space exploration, spatial.
Yes, but that's what I'm trying to say. Everything being created that's new is being created by opposing forces.
Yeah,
and it's a joke. Like that's what the real.
There's nothing new going on. If anything, I feel like what we're going through right now is a fucking distraction of like centuries old fucking solvable problems, while the actual newness that's being invented around us is being not paid attention to. I feel like this what we're going through is a distraction to what's going on truly that we should be paying attention to as a citizenry. Should we be talking about what we want to do with regard to AI and how we want to, put laws and regulation on that? Do we want to be talking about what we want to do with things like CRISPR and Invitae and companies like that are doing, gene sequencing? And what are the legal situations around it that we should be considered about? Like, no one's talking about like, hey, Starlink is going to be throwing up 40,000 satellites into the fucking atmosphere for like, broadband access in remote areas of the world. Like, is that going to be an issue with space pollution, anything else? Like, as you said, climate change. Like, all of fucking the West Coast is on fire right now. I think there's over 100 fires.
You don't have a thinking populace, and that's the thing is that when you have an anti-intellectual populace, this populace thinks that they're thinking, because this is the most educated generation in American history. So they think that they're thinking because they're attending school, but really what they're doing is they're co-opting a language to appear to be thinking. Like it's this intellectual jargon of microaggressions and cultural appropriation and dogma, and it's pontification. It is the presentation or the pretense of thinking. But when people are actually thinking and engaging in the process of thinking, that you had Aimé Césaire and James Baldwin and Frantz Fanon and a whole actual generation of real organic intellectuals who weren't produced by the university because they didn't trust the university, and who really pursued thinking on their own and with others in pursuit of love and liberation, then you just produce something brand new. And like the thing is that I feel like we trust especially in the Black community, we trust theorists and we trust academics way too much, and like are still looking at those people to create a language and create like a way out. But those people aren't in the hood. Like I can tell you, having attended Columbia, I have a younger sister that goes to Harvard. Like they're not in the hood. They don't give a fuck. Like they really don't. And they're all like Black love, and like they don't care. They don't care because maybe they care in like their intentions, but their impact is never going to reach anybody who really needs it, because they are fundamentally afraid of those people. Like they are fundamentally afraid. Absolutely. People in the ivory tower, like even at Columbia, if people watching this have ever been to New York, they don't really cross the park. to come to Harlem. It's literally less than 500 feet. Like they don't descend down into Harlem to figure out what the fuck is going on, but then they want to talk about prison abolition and they don't want to talk to anybody that's in prison. So it's just like they don't give a fuck. And it's like until you get people that really, really care and really mean well, like, and are thinking about thinking and are well versed in like written and spoken language, which is also very rare, then things remain the same, even though they're changing so fast. Because I say that they remain the same because we remain effectively uninvolved in our own destinies. We remain uninvolved, and that's not going to change.
That's literally my biggest concern about the present moment than any moment in the past is that while, as you said, we may be supposedly more educated in this moment, I feel like we're the most apathetic we've ever been. And
we're passive.
Yeah, like we're assuming that there's going to be somebody with a fucking degree to come save us, and it's not going to be someone else. It's going to be you. It's going to be us.
It's a zero-sum game too. They think that it's like okay, like you do the activism, you do the protest, but felt impact is zero.
And to me, the activism. I'm not saying people, if you want to do that, good for you. But I'm like, what does the activism lead to? It's like, okay, we're calling attention to this issue, but what's the actual, one, defined issue, and two, the defined solution? And like you said, there's not this. If we take the recent protests, and I wasn't expecting to get here, but it's like, okay, we're upset. We want to eventually defund the police, and then that gets twisted into like, we want to reform the police and we want to deregulate it and take away blah 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 blah. And to me, before it's over, it just becomes like this amalgamation of different ideas, this like sauce of wannabe ideas, and it doesn't actually get to anything. And I understand that's why some people may lose their like vigor, their willingness to want to engage in the system because it seems like it's for naught. But I don't know. It's just like,
you know what? I'll engage this idea because it's a platform to engage ideas. I think that if you're talking about prison abolition and police abolition, I literally just thought of this. Like, for me, abolish juvenile detention centers first and stop arresting children. And this is why I'm just going to throw this idea out there, because what I'm learning now and what I engage in now is really, I'm back to the 90s Rainbow Nation, Michael Jackson, probably not the best reference, idea of like the Save the Children era. Because when I look around in my hood and look around the ghetto, it's really the children that have been forgotten, and we left that No Child Left Behind shit. I mean, when I think of who suffers most at the hands of unchecked technology, like who suffers most at the hands of climate change, who suffers most, it's always kids. It's always like just kids, under 18 children. And when you're not talking about or engaging with that part of the community, when you're not raising the minds of the children, and there's no church anymore, there's no community centers, like where are kids actually? When I heard about the pandemic, right now, currently, there's millions of uneducated, like they're children that are unschooled. They're not going to school, they have no access to schooling. That for me was the nightmare. And when I thought about when people were closing parks, and it always seems to be the populace that's the least addressed, is children, even though they're always the most vulnerable and impacted. And so when you talk about newness, you're talking about children. When you talk about police and prison abolition, it's like maybe if we stop incarcerating literal children, which we're the only people in the world that do that. It's like if we weren't, we would never even have ever even gotten to a point of the Obama administration even ever putting kids in cages across the border, and then like it being exasperated by Donald Trump, if we weren't comfortable putting kids in cages in juvenile detention centers. And I used to see kids going to jail. So it's like, when you're talking about things like that, like real solutions that are actually much more actionable and not really that questionable, like, sure, you talk to somebody, an old head in your apartment building, and they're like, we can't abolish prisons, there are murderers, it's not. But what if you told them, okay, well, let's just shut down the juvenile detention centers? I'm sure they would be much more likely like, yeah, I'm sure we can find something else to do with a 14-year-old than send them to jail, which is just prepping them. And then you actually cripple the prison industrial complex. Like you really cripple it because it's a pipeline that starts with the way that we create a carceral environment in school, and then we put them in juvenile, and then we put them in adult prisons. When you cripple that and really focus on alternative methods of restitution, remission, repentance, and reconciliation among children, which everybody can do because everyone needs to be involved with the kids in their neighborhood in some way, and I always say that, then you really start to do real work. And it's the work that's forgotten, and it's the work that people don't care about. And it's the work that's not really sexy, because it's just like, yeah, save the children. It's very like 1993, like Bon Jovi U2 concert. But that's where I'm at, and that's what I think about that. As far as when people are like, where do we start? It's like, start with the kids.
A great place to begin, as we should always begin with them anyway. You know, it's like you said, just the fact that I think most people could agree with that. That seems like it's palatable, right?
Exactly.
Okay, you don't want to abolish the police, fine. You don't want to abolish like prisons because there's murderers, rapists, and sex offenders, whatever. Okay, fine. How about let's do something with these juvenile detention centers? Let's see if that catches away. Because I mean, people didn't want to know this, but like you probably tell me about the whole, let's defund the police shit. Like this is probably 4 years ago, but we don't have to discuss that.
Oh, we don't have to discuss it.
Let's not discuss that. I remember walking through Soho with you, and I was like, nah, that's a fucking idea. You know what I mean? Like, so,
the thing about being a visionary, there's no room for self-righteousness, because if I started on I told you so,
you'd be here for a while. Don't do that.
I won't even do it. I won't even it doesn't feel good either. It's like in Greek mythology, there's Cassandra, who was the prophet that nobody believed. Like, she would always be able to predict the future, but she would never be believed. So it was a gift and a curse. Mm-hmm. It's like probably one of the more interesting Greek mythologies. But yeah, it's like, I don't ever want to feel like Cassandra of just like, oh, I told you so. Nobody really heeded it, because I think that it's just a matter of microphone. It's just like now, but then one day people are going to be like, who's going to be the next president? What's the weather? And I'm going to be like, I don't know. And then people are going to feel the type of way. That's always how it works. That's always how it works. Either you're what did JC say? Would you rather be underpaid or overrated? I'd definitely rather be overrated, but yeah, it's like it's coming. It's coming.
Same here. Maybe there's a tide, but I still think there's like, I mean, maybe this is not a segue to anything, but I still feel like there's quite a few existential crises that we have that we're not like properly attacking as a society. And that maybe a society as a country, or society as a world, but like human nature is just always to like be reactionary. We never plan for shit that looks obvious, or even things that we could perceive to happen in the future. We want it to be just, like you said, the reality of the moment when it's in the worst fucking shape, rather than being like, there's probably going to be this shit that everyone knows is going to happen that we should probably prepare for. Do we want to do it now when it's like seemingly expensive, or do it later and expensive with regard to time or resources or whatever you may have to put into it? Or do we want to do it later when it's a fucking calamity and there's going to be no time, it's going to be more expensive, and it's going to require even more effort? And it's always, as a collective force, we're always just like, we're here now, we might as well do what we can. And that's the worst time to think through a problem.
That's the exact reason what I just said about the investment in children. It is about prevention. It's about prevention of a whole bunch of shit. Because with proper education and better socialization and real spiritual discipline, we'd have a completely entire other generation. We don't even know the ramifications of engaging an entire generation in social media for their whole lives. Like having cameras in babies' faces, we have no clue. So we're not being preventional even right now. Even as we speak, like the world's getting worse. But it's a spiritual crisis fundamentally. And I think that that's really why where I like to end any intellectual conversation is to say that these are things that at the root of them require spiritual solutions. They require like real spiritual work, and not, it's like almost saying it just sounds like bullshit, but it's really like the real crux of a lot of these issues are people that have no knowledge of self and therefore have no knowledge of anything outside of them, and not historical knowledge of themselves on some like African Bombada, like where do you come from shit. Like really like what is the worth of my soul? And like when you don't know the worth of your soul, you're searching for mediation constantly to distract from your own emptiness. And like you're being sold solutions and you're destroying the planet, and like you're disengaged, or you're engaged in the wrong shit, or you're violent, or you're aggressive, because there's a metaphysical sense of undoing deep in your soul that starts from like socialization of children. And that spiritual crisis, until it's addressed, which so much of my podcast is that. I used to think like, oh, I need to address culture and society. And people would be like, what kind of podcast is it? It's like culture and society. And of course, I always touch on the police and history and all this other stuff. But it became people asking me about spiritual questions and questions of love and questions of like, what am I doing here and who am I? because it really is from that point within that you produce any real solutions without. And it's funny because those people who will come to me like, this changed my life, this changed the way that I worked or the way that I pursued, or I moved here and did this instead of doing this, you are producing actionable consequences in government, politics, and whatever else, because people are like, I know who I am and I know what I'm supposed to do and I know the difference between right and wrong. And like when people don't have those fundamental inside interior knowings, they go out and they cause destruction, even if they're not malicious. Even if they're not malicious. It's like most white people completely not self-aware in the slightest. Are most of them malicious? No, not really, unless it's learned malice, but are they completely self-unaware? Definitely. Like they have no clue who they are. There's an entire class of, there's a woman who makes literally hundreds of thousands of dollars a year teaching a class to white women on self-pleasure, literally on masturbation. Like there are grown-ass white women out here that have no clue how their vagina looks, like none. And it's like, you think why they're so tense and like locking the fucking car door and like, you know, oh my God, you got my drink order wrong, and like belittling people. They're using a power that they don't know how to express it in any kind of healthy ways because they don't even know what their vagina looks like. And I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than knowing what your dick looks like, but it's not that much more complicated. Like, it's because they're afraid of themselves. They're afraid. So they're gonna do violence. They're gonna do destruction. No way that they're not.
There's like so much of that I think deserves like a much deeper conversation, because I feel like that's the overall truth that I think I would probably hold to when I consider some people who would do those actions that you mentioned, those malicious actions, that ignorant sort of like reckless, like malintention or whatever it is. I don't care. But there is about like knowing yourself and knowing your worth and knowing your power and having a connection to like the, as you said, your spiritual self, your internal world, and the world by extension. But I do feel like it's not just white folks that have that sort of like missing.
Oh, not at all. It's not just white folks.
Right? It's expressed in them much more like dramatically because it's probably just more of them in the majority, and they tend to run a little bit more of like
no, there's more of us, but it's because they have power that their negligence when expressed is more impactful on the entirety of the population. It's just like it's a bull. If white people were disempowered, then their neurotic, fearful, talentless selves, it wouldn't matter what they do. It's that they're empowered. And that's the thing, when you know yourself and empower yourself through the knowledge of history, through the knowledge of self, through the knowledge of God, then you have a sense of at least self-control. And that's important for non-white people to have that spiritual knowledge. It's what made Malcolm X, because it's the idea of I'm not powerless, but also my actions impact others. They actually impact others. I'm writing a book right now, and there's a chapter where I talk about catcalling and how for the longest in my neighborhood, there would be all these young men who would just say the most crazy shit, like just crazy shit to me. And all of a sudden one day, like I decided that I was like done with it. I was gonna start talking back to them. And I found that once I actually engaged with them, they were like quite innocent and very much like, oh, I didn't know that was wrong, or I didn't know that like I didn't know you were listening to me, is what they said. And it was crazy because I realized that these were men that felt so unlistened to, so unheard, that they were shouting the most vulgar and ridiculous things into the void because they were so used to having no dignity of voice that they thought that their words weren't impacting me, because they thought that their words weren't impacting anything. And it's like once I engaged with them and gave dignity back to their voice, they not only recognized that I was a person, but that their words were being listened to. And it's not to say that it started a grand revolution or an impact, but it was just to say that like somebody was made aware of something that was actually producing harm, and they stopped. They stopped doing it to me. Shit, like I don't know if they're like
they stopped doing that shit to me.
But they stopped. It was like what? It stopped with me, because it's just a matter of like people that are not self-aware. They do harm even without malice. They do so much harm. And for me, it's like self-knowledge. Sure, maybe you're not going to go out and create some sort of grand becoming and like do the Michelle Obama thing, or like make $1 gajillion, or like marry the man of your dreams, or whatever capitalistic excess bullshit that they're selling you at Barnes and Noble right now. But at least do no harm. at least mitigate harm. Because a lot of these people, it's not about what you're gonna, most people, they go through their life and they really don't do anything that's like crazy significant. They don't. Like,
That's a fact.
that's not the narrative I'm selling. I will never sell the narrative 10 steps to becoming Bianca Vivion. Good luck. Good luck. Like, because then I don't make my check. But I would just do no harm. The thing about the episode about struggle, it was not struggle in the way to get your dreams. It was literally, the point was stop being an enemy of yourself.
Yep.
Stop self-destructing, because then you're bound to do less harm in the world. Like you become self-aware that your neighborhood is a neighborhood. You stop littering. You don't it's not even about climate change. You're just like, I have to live here. Let me stop making it dirty. And then all of a sudden the world's a little bit cleaner. You're producing a little less plastic. It's about that. It's about mitigating harm.
I think you summarized it right there. Like, there's really nothing left to be said. You just like took the words out of my mouth. It's about that, and that's the education. No, and that's the education that children need. It's like we're teaching them fucking math and algebra. No. Teach them exactly what you just said about that. Like, that's what to me, like, that's the summary of life. Do no harm and try to do some fucking good if you can. But once you know,
if you can, if you're able, if you're talented.
Yeah, exactly. If you can, I'm not gonna put that burden on other people, but like, at least do no harm. Leave the fucking campfire site the way you left it, as people say. Like,
right. A lot of these big ass fires are like gender reveal parties. It's just like, it's this level. It's like the individual nature, this selfishness of just like the world is me and I am disconnected from everything around me. Which, you're right, it's not black or white, but it is very American.
It's very American.
It exasperates all types of global crises, and it's really just like, if we just learn about harm mitigation, about like controlling our own anxieties and depression and neurosis and sexual desires and vices, then maybe we could do a lot less harm. We could do less harm in romance. It's like, for me, I'm just sort of like, do I need to be in a relationship right now? Like, am I, people don't even ask themselves that. They jump into all types of shit and are just like, well, I'm sorry I did all this harm. Like, I guess I wasn't very ready to be with someone. It's like, you don't think that you could have just like soul searched even the most basic of your financial or personal situation to be like, maybe I probably shouldn't be in a relationship? No, it's none of that. It's literally just like, I'm just living, no clue what I'm doing.
And maybe to a degree we all do that. Some people are more harmful than others, but definitely I think we all do. But I think just to the larger point about, like, I think it's just a mindset of like, life is about, consumption and destruction in a way that it's almost like, I think we have this sort of like linear approach to life. You're born, you live, consume, and into excess, and then die, and whatever fucking happens in the period of that time that you've been alive doesn't fucking matter. And it's just sort of like, it's almost like a whole entire corporate structure. Like, somebody else in like janitorial is gonna pick that shit up, or somebody in marketing is gonna resolve the fucking campfire. Somebody over here is gonna put out fucking racism in the fucking hood, or somebody over here is gonna like get rid of these fucking food deserts. And somebody, it's just like, I'm here to live, exist, consume what I have to consume, because I'm gonna be dead in a couple of years, or dead in a decade, or dead in fucking 50 years. And there's no like personal accountability for the world around us or ourselves, as you said. And I don't know what sort of like coursework that somebody needs to do, but somebody needs to do a masterclass on that.
It's about abandoning all notions of destiny. That's what it is. It's that we abandon them because white men made the concept of destiny extremely harmful. When you're thinking of like Manifest Destiny and like the City on a Hill, like their notions of destiny were so destructive. And then the notion of destiny of, I'll see like our collective destiny one day over the mountaintop, Martin Luther King, like we'll get there. And people are like, fuck the mountaintop. Like, I want change now. And then trying to get easy street leads to no street at all. And it's just wandering. So we have no collective destiny, and we don't have really individual sense of destiny, except for Black people are on this whole build generational wealth. Like that's their whole thing. It's just like trying to believe that, again, that capitalism is a fundamentally good system, that fixable system that can be worked through. And if you just amass money for your children to oppress other people, then like somehow it'll all balance out in like a zero-sum game. But if you don't have a soul idea of destiny, of where my soul is going in this lifetime, purposefulness of righteousness, charity, honesty, and fraternity among brothers, then you really you're really just gonna do harm, because you're really just idle. You're just throwing shit at the wall hoping that it sticks. Like it's the oldest notion of it. Like someone that doesn't have any clue where they're going, they're gonna end up pretty much in the worst place possible. And that's what's happened to this country And that's what's happened to our households, like individually. And that's why you have so many Black men, 1 in 3 Black men somewhere in this system. That's why. It's because they have no notion of destiny. And people are just like, and if you just send your kid out into the world and say like, oh, we'll see what the system or the school or whatever does with them, and that kid has no sense of destiny, no sense of at least I'm gonna go to college, fuck if they do or not, but at least if a kid is in middle school, you should not tell them not everybody goes to college, because you've already fucked them up. And people are doing that right now. Not every college, we've devalued education because of our notions of racism. Yeah, it's just the whole thing is fucked, but it all starts with a soul. And really it's because institutionalized religion has gone completely astray. It used to be our center, and now there is no center. There's no center whatsoever. So, what do you do?
I mean, it's interesting. You're asking me. I don't know.
Well, you do know. But you do know.
You want to know like my vision of the world, because I really don't. I was going to ask you actually. That was going to be my next thing that I asked you. Like, what was your vision of the world if you could make it the way you see it? But my vision would be, and of course I need some time, but it's not too far off from what you said earlier. But it's about people taking accountability and doing internal work. Like these books that I've been writing, they've allowed me to grow and find purpose more than anything else I've ever done, more than any college class I've taken, more than any fucking job I've had, and more than any sort of like anything. It's just about like me taking time to do self-discovery, figuring out my worth, realizing that I have some value that I can bring to existence. Like you said, do no harm and try to actually provide some good. And like you said, it's about like my destiny. Like I have something, a vision in my mind of what I would like the world to look like. And that's a more loving place, a place that people think about others more than themselves, at least half the fucking time. A place that we treat everything like a fucking relationship. And it's simplistic to say, but that's just kind of how I like boil things down to the simplest place. I treat everything in life like a relationship, a good one, a one that you gave a fuck about, someone that you were trying to marry. If you treated every single thing in life like that, things would be better. If I said, this fucking world is like my deepest lover. It's like how I want to love myself. Like you said, I'm not going to fucking throw garbage in the fucking street because that's me. I wouldn't throw garbage on me. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to shower it. I'm going to nurture it. I'm going to give it good things. I'm going to elevate it. I'm going to embolden it. I'm going to like say nice things to it. I'm going to give it confidence. I'm going to give it, accountability and give it like discipline when needed. It's just, it's like those sort of things that you're echoing. They maybe come back down to spirituality. I'm not the most religious person, but I damn sure believe in a higher power. I believe in space. I believe in a higher power. I believe in having faith. You got to believe in something to be able to navigate the world. Because if you believe in nothing, you become a fucking anarchist, and everything's like, you don't give a shit if things burn, which is bullshit. Like things matter, people matter, and I don't want the world to fucking burn.
The thing is that, I mean, this is very Bob Marley. Like it's all in the book, but people always ask people. It's actually funny because I've had like 3 interviews this summer, and they all ask me like, "What is your ideal world?" And people hate that I say this, but I'm like, this is my ideal world. Mm-hmm. This is my ideal world because it's a world where righteous struggle is available. And it's because in Islam, we believe that the book literally says, this is but a game, it's a test for an eternal world and a hereafter. Mm-hmm. And when you believe that everyone has the availability to create a real impactful legacy that then earns you a place in eternity where actually there is the existence of justice, righteousness, good. I'm not trying to create heaven here, mm-hmm. but I know that in the way that I live my life in what is my ideal fashion, which is honest and truth and loving and righteous. And it's jihad. It's the notion of struggle. It's the notion of an internal struggle and an external struggle. And I'm participating in it. And when I see things like police and white supremacists and people who rather see me dead than alive, those are my enemies. And I like that I have enemies. I like that there's something to struggle again. I like that there's something to be destroyed. There's something to be pursued. There's something to be done. In an ideal world, nothing would happen. Like really, and that's the thing, in heaven, there is no pursuit. There's no sense of consciousness. There's no sense of pain. There's no sense of, that's the ideal world, and it exists. But in this world, in this jihad, it's like, let's have some fun. Let's really fuck something up. Like, let's really change.
I'm not seeking utopia, but I am seeking better. I got to be honest. Like,
of course, no, but that's the thing. But that's the worth of your lifetime. Yeah, that's the thing. Like a world without struggle. The thing is, I would just be like, do I want a different struggle? And it's like, what would that look like? Like, it's like, oh, would I want to struggle against something that's not racism? Okay, like, what am I going to struggle against? Capitalism? Or I'd want to struggle to save the planet? Like, I don't want to trade my struggle for 100 years ago struggle. Do I want to struggle for the right to vote? Fuck no. Like, to vote for the same politicians? Would I want new But that's the thing. Whatever I want my ideal struggle to be, it can be that. And that's the thing, like that, when you envision an ideal world that's a utopia, then everything is immediately out of reach, and again, I'm powerless. But if I visualize my ideal world as me participating in an ideal struggle, which is Islam, then I'm right where I am. I'm right where I need to be, and it gives me limitless power over the situation, because all I have to do is try. The ideal is everybody trying for better. That's the ideal for me. And that's what, but it's not just the ideal, it's my purpose to be like, you try and you try harder, and you're not good enough, try harder, try different, try better, try for somebody else. And when I do that, I'm in my ideal world. If everyone's trying, and everyone in my life gives a fuck, because everyone that doesn't, they got kicked out a long time ago. So it's like, when I'm with everybody in my life, everyone's trying for better. Everyone's trying to create a dialogue. Everyone's participating in destiny and impacting my own in a bettering way. That's the ideal. That's the ideal, is where I'm living, because this is never going to be heaven.
I think that may be the notion, that may be like relative to our privilege, because I agree. I mean, the people that I know, I mean, you're one of them, obviously. So it shows like I'm blessed to have those that I have in my life. They're not normal people. They're like on that same path as you just described. But I'm aware that the rest of the world isn't like this. I am in a bubble. You know, my reality is one that I think very few people even have a semblance of. You know, I don't think I know what it lives like and what it looks like to just wake up, have no purpose, get through the day, and every day is getting through the next day to an endless, until there's no more days to get through. And there's a lot.
That's where we go wrong. And this is something that I'm always pushing against. This notion of a bubble, that was the whole world for since human existence, up until less than 100 years ago. The notion of mass suffering, the fact even right now that I know that there's a fire blazing in Oregon that's killed 12 today, and that like what San Francisco looks like right now, even 40 years ago, your notion of what the rest of the world looked like came from a newspaper, and then you had to wait till the next day. The fact that right now I can geotag and see fires in Vietnam burning and a protest crisis going on in Hong Kong, and like the surveillance system in Russia, it's too much, and it's disempowering. And so when I see my friends trying, and when I see the local teacher and the people in my building, when I see the landlord across the hall cutting rent for the tenant that lives under them, that is the ideal world, because if that's the world that's within my control, and the world that can make me feel hopeful, which is necessary to the struggle. And if I see kids listening to their parents, and parents giving a fuck about their kids' education, and like people saying no to drugs and saying yes to better, if it's just this cliche little world, and it's why I've mythologized Harlem. It's why people read things and they're like, that's a magical place, because I engage with the world around me as if it is always getting better. Because if the rest of the world is burnt, people are like, New York City's dead. I say, not Harlem. I say, not 110th to 155th Street. Because if that's happening, then that's on me. Anything, I don't even give a, if shit is burning out on 109, I don't give a fuck. Don't call this phone. Don't call this phone. And if shit is happening in the Heights on 160th, don't call this phone. No man for
I agree with what you're saying, and it's like, I feel like that's the thinking that gets people to these silos, but maybe that's
because of the 90s notion, this Rainbow Nation notion of I am a part of my community and I impact it. And when you have people that abandon their communities to move to a metropolis, have no investment in that metropolis, gentrify it, and then move back to that place when there's a crisis, then you have no notion of permanence or community outside of your friend group. But for me, it's the block, it's the street. It's like, people know me around here. Like, you say my name on my block, they know who you're talking, they know they know who Viv is. They know they can come to me if they need something. Like, I carry groceries it's me being like, this is my world and I'm responsible for it. And I'm not going to discount that because my notion of the rest of the world is fucked up. Because there has never been a time, even if you perfected the entire situation in America, then it would be a fascist crisis going on in Brazil. It'd be half the Amazon burning down. It'd be China going through whatever China's always going through. You know, it's just, that's not up to me, because I was put in a specific locale and location in a point of history. I know the history of my neighborhood. And I learned this in Cuba, spending time in Cuba, because Cubans could tell you everything about Cuban history. And I'm talking about from the guttermost to the uttermost. They know Cuban history. They are extremely communal, like communistic. Like if someone's car breaks down, everyone rushes to fix it. And that's why you could have cars that haven't been serviced right since the 1950s still running with Toyota parts and Hyundai parts and this weird old Ford. When you see those old cars, they're running with all these, because it's everyone's responsibility. But that's because they're isolated from the rest of the world. So what happens on their island is their responsibility. What happens with their neighbors is their responsibility. And that's their world. And that's what I try to build, like in my immediate community, or else it's always gonna feel like nothing good is happening. Nothing's getting done. And I look around at my friends and I'm like, I'm so proud of you, but then nothing matters. Like it's about that A to B to C impact I was talking about. If I have to be a global superhero, if I have to save the world, I'm gonna fail. But if I have to take care of myself, my family, my immediate community, the children of my community, then I could be a real somebody superhero. And that makes me feel good. It makes me feel good. And it makes everything feel not impossible. If all I do is give $5 to the guy on the block today that needs to get a meal, if he eats, good. It's one less hungry person. It's all cliche. It's all cliche and it's all very simple. But it's like we need to get back to that simplicity, because what the academics and the theoreticians have done is make it all feel so global Black liberation. It's like, that's just colonialism. Like people, my brother sent me this thing the other day, we need to go buy land in Africa and really like be in an African state. I'm like, they did that in Liberia. It was a fucking disaster.
Work out
colonialism.
Unfortunately.
Why not? But you know what? I bought my apartment in Harlem.
Well.
I'm like, I'm living on my 40 acres and a mule. It's somewhere along the line, today and the present and what's real in front of us has to be enough. And the struggle of the day has to be enough. Mm-hmm. Because it's how I live a legacy and say I'm proud of myself. Or else nobody, and that's the thing, you have a generation of people that can't be proud of what they've accomplished because you're asking young people, how are you gonna solve climate change? It's like, that's too much.
Yeah, way too much.
Too much. It's too much, and it's why, and that's how a very...
That's just New York.
It's how you let a very, very few people take control of everything. Because fascism is when you as an individual feel so disempowered on how you can employ or affect your local community that you just say, you know what, just give it to the man up top and he'll take care of it. It's how some cunning con man comes into a neighborhood and says, just give me control and I'll fix everything because it's all just gotten too big for you. If you look around and you say, no, it's not too big for me. I know what my position is. I know what my role is. I know who my family and my neighbors are. It's not too big. Then you will never defer your destiny to somebody else who really is just a personality. It's just big personalities. I won't tell you how many people are just like, Bianca, you should do it. I'm like, you do it. They're just like, you're much more equipped. I'm like, why? Because I'm talkative? And that's how you get con men in office. It is. Because they say, oh, I know how to handle this. And they have no knowledge of history, no basic knowledge of math or science or social studies. And they can come in and take over entire nations because people want to defer their destinies to people who are like, I can fix this mess. But if you can really say, I can fix this mess, you'll never do that. You don't end up under those regimes. And it's a sin as old as time.
I think that's it, man. I hope everybody understands, like, this is why, you are a heroic figure to me. I mean, it's again, it's not about like you being larger than life, as you just said. It's about you being so focused on the immediate.
Yeah.
Like the I won't even call them small things. They're actually the big things. But that's why, like, you are so wise, is because you know exactly what matters.
It's the real things, you know, it's the real shit. Because the thing is that half the time when we read about global tragedy, it's really just it's an avatar. It can be switched. If this happening, this happening. It's not even real to us. It's not actually real in any real impactful way. Like we see a tsunami hitting the coast of some far off land, like near the Philippines. It's not real to us. It's just but it does make us fearful and it makes us anxious. But yet it doesn't actually. It's why I don't touch it. I stopped trying to be a global citizen. It's bullshit. It's like the only people who are really global citizens. It's the billionaires of the world who have more money than entire GDPs, who can affect entire geopolitical situations, vaccines, and, like genetic engineering, the whole Bill Gates Foundation. I'm not trying to be a global citizen because that shit is always imperialism. I'm not trying to control everything. I'm not trying to be everywhere with everybody. Like, I mean, I really felt when the explosion a few weeks ago happened in Beirut, I'd been to Beirut. I have friends there who are like family. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna deal with this. Other than that, it's not. I'm going back to like the isolationist mentality of like the 1950s when you could actually affect things in your community because the world was only as big as your community. And we have these Disney Channel notions of going out in the world and like being a part of the world. And the world just sends your ass back home disappointed every time. So I'm like, I'm home here. And that's why I'm like, I gotta do what I gotta do here. I gotta handle my business here. Like, that's what I'm up to. I know that's what you're up to too. You find your place and then you make your way through it.
I just want people to understand, like, I'm doing the same thing. I believe in everything that you said, like probably too wholeheartedly. That's why I'm just listening. I'm like, you say it better than I can. So I'm
such a good moderator. I'm taking tips for you for this talk show. I'm like,
it's like it's better for me to hear you talk, man, and because you say things, as you said, in a way that I think most people can like engage with it. It seems so honest, so real. It just has to be the truth. And I think more people may hopefully wake up to that as they move along, because like you said, it's gotten too big. Maybe we've gotten to a point where, we've been led to believe the fantasy and the false consciousness that we are everywhere, that we are these Supermen, that we are these fucking like Avengers that could, like, if some shit happens in some place that you don't know about, that you're gonna go swoop in with your fucking cape and your iPhone and you're gonna save the day. Like,
and Marvel, the foundations of the superhero notion are a white supremacist dream. Like Marvel, the actual foundations, the first superhero film was Birth of a Nation with Ku Klux Klan, and that is the notion of I'm gonna come in and these people are incapable. These Black people, these Indians are incapable of handling this nation and the destiny of this nation. So my manifest destiny pursuit is to both destroy them who are enemies of the land and for me to conquer it and put it under my dominion. We gotta get back to something smaller. It's gotta be about the block. I mean, the last time people felt any kind of good about anything was the 90s, when it really was about local food drives and AIDS concerts and shit that was just so immediate and so like on the block, like I feel it here. And we've gotten so far away from that. And it's just trying to be a part of some global context. What have we gained? Other than global travel, like, which is a beautiful thing in some ways and very detrimental in others, because we create like one monolith of culture across the world, that like an Airbnb culture where you can go everywhere and basically be in Seattle. Like, it's kind of weird.
Like, oh my God, I'm in LA again. Wow, glass house.
Yeah. It's just. Yeah. We haven't gained anything from it. And I think that for me, it's like time to rethink that bigger world that we had been trying to build. And it's like me, even in the pursuit of larger platforms, always being suspicious of the notion of being a global voice for anything. Extremely suspicious, because in that, the tantalizing notions of fame, of people who want to be famous, and it's just like, you want to talk to everybody and say nothing. I'm like, I tell people all the time, like, don't be offended by what I say, because I'm probably talking to Black people. Like,
exactly.
So if I say like, wow, we're not shit right now, to Black, it's an intercommunal conversation. I'm not talking to like everybody. I'm not talking about everything. Like, I'm really talking to Black people. And that's like that's my purview, because I know that's where I'll be understood. If other people overhear it and they're like, why did you say this? What did you mean? Like, sure, I'll clarify, but I'm like, that's really not my community. And that's the thing, like, I'm in the Times and all these other places, and it's like a cosmopolitan, it's so easy for people, like, it's a cosmopolitan voice. It's a global voice. It's like, not really. I'm like always talking to niggas. I'm really just talking to my neighbors a lot of the time. My neighbor hates me, the one that lives under me. But it's just like, I'm not talking to everybody. I don't want to be everything to everybody because I'm gonna fail.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to save everybody, I'm gonna fail.
It's impossible. Like, there's nobody that's everything to everybody. Like, everybody has someone who completely diametrically opposes their view. Like, and that's most people. But it's interesting that you say that because, you know, one, the fact that, you know, you don't want to be nostalgic, but you want to go back to the 90s, which I completely understand why, because it's not a going back to anything in nostalgia. It's an understanding about what's real, as you said, which is community. So it's really not a nostalgia thing. It's about going back to actually what fucking works and what is actually real and what is manageable. And if that happens, it seems nostalgic to some people, I guess.
It's without mediation. I mean, fuck it. Early 2000s even, like Honey era. It's just the last time that what was in front of us had to be enough. That's what I'm trying to go back to. It's the time where without that escape, you know, without that, there was nowhere else to go. There was nowhere else to go.
How do you negotiate that though? It's like that wanting for the small community focused sort of like life compared to where we are headed. It's like, I feel like we don't have issues if we don't have at least an ear or in one eye or at least half an eye someplace.
Where are we headed?
Where are we headed? Where do I think we're headed, or where?
Yeah, where are we headed?
I feel like we're increasingly headed to where a place of like increasing like disconnection. You know, like we're getting stratified in a way where, you know, everything's about this. You know, everything's about.
But that's the thing, like,
you know,
but if we end up there, then it's my fault. And if we end up there, then it's my fault. If I die in that world of fundamental disconnect, then I failed. I gotta live with that. Because what is the point of this conversation? When you brought me onto it, you said we're creating a real conversation. Mm-hmm. This is a one-to-one conversation that you're hoping has the impact of direct connection to like the small respective followings that we both have. So if this fails, then that'll occur. If what I'm doing fails, if with the people that are in our lives, what Joshua, with the other people that you're interviewing, if everybody fails at our fundamental job of recreating purposeful, intimate, immediate connection, then we can talk about that. But until that day comes, I'm not going to when people talk about the future, it's always in a purview that is up to someone else. But if I'm talking about the future, I'm talking about the future that I'm creating. I
wasn't doing that. Like, my future is not going to be the future that may exist. I understand.
My household, that there will not be 6-year-olds walking around.
No. That's not.
And the thing that we're also talking in a very American context. Like, you know, 1 billion something people have Facebook, but billions don't. And I think that is the thing. But
the way they're working, you gotta understand, like, you know, capitalism more than I do. Like, the way they're working is that they're trying to have those other billions have it. Like, we're not going to a world where they're trying to negate that. They're trying to spread that. I mean, they're
trying, and this is the idea of. This is why I said my ideal world is where everyone's struggling. Because in warfare, to decide that the opponent has won before you engage in the warfare, you've already lost. But if it's a struggle, if to say that they're gonna be trying forever, like they have been trying to make sure that Black people are enslaved permanently for the rest of time, like that we have no sense of humanization. And it's my job to make sure that when I die, they're still trying. Mm-hmm. They're still trying because I'm still trying. Mm-hmm. We're both gonna be trying. It's like me being like, it's funny because we're always like, abolish the cops. But in the back rooms of police precincts, they're saying abolish Black people. Like, that's really what they're saying. And so for me, it's about you try your hardest and I'm gonna try my hardest and we're gonna see who comes out. And that's the hustler's code. It's like you take my chain and I'll try to take yours and we see who the fuck goes home with 2 chains today. And that's me.
How many you got on already? I think you already have on 2 chains. So
I have on 3. But that's the point. It's
clearly thinking somebody
got their chain took today. Somebody lost their chain today. That's just it. That's it. Listen, somebody got their chain took today.
Let me find out.
And that's why we say it's a blessed Friday because I'm winning. I'm winning.
I'm gonna let you live. I'm not gonna engage in the subject anymore because I see where you're coming from. You're on your Malcolm X shit. You're on your Bianca Vivion.
But it's a it has to be the way. It has to be the way that we speak, because when children overhear that everything is a loss, that everything is like descending into chaos, that it's like, if we're no longer trying, like, it has to be a real, because then everything that we're like trying against, it just becomes like, are we lying when we say that we're struggling for better? Is it really that we have decided that the future is fundamentally bleaker and bleaker and bleaker? It's just that we're programmed for that mindset. It's like, it's that idea of simulation that the Hoteps are always talking about. We're just living in a simulation. It's like, yeah, if you decide that there's a decided end and that decided end is negative, you are living in a simulation. When you're talking about in 1700, to say abolish slavery was talking about fundamentally a completely different world. It was, people would laugh at you. Yeah. Like, it was one thing to say, if you're a slave and you're like, I want to get free, it's like, nigga, me too. It's a whole nother thing to say abolish.
Now, that's the original Me Too, by the way. The original Me Too.
Right. Nigga, like,
Me too.
If you're in prison today, you're like, I can't wait to get out of here. But the notion that there'd be no more here is that you were living in a different world. And that's the thing. Somebody, even in 1700, like, Frederick Douglass was not the first abolitionist. He was one of the last. Because to live in a world without slavery in America was a fundamentally different world. And that is what I'm pursuing. And that, because for me, as a child, the notion of being educated, gainfully employed, married to one monogamous partner for an entire lifetime, these were things that were not in the realm of existence that I was seeing in my world. And now look around, that's my world. Why? Why not? Why can't I just say that that's how shit is gonna be? Why not? In my lifetime. It's like, if I say I wanna see no more cops in my lifetime, why not struggle? Why not? And really mean it, because if I'm just like on some fake it till you make it shit, then I'm just an influencer. I'm just advertising some shit to you to buy because it sounds good. No, it is that. It's like, I don't know. If it is revolutionary, because any real change brings loss. I'm like, I'm willing to give up whatever the world is around us. And the funny thing about it is that it's already being destroyed by natural forces anyway. It's like the world is burning down, and there is a pandemic killing a bunch of people and changing economic structures permanently. So why don't I get to say what comes next?
Exactly. So I guess the question is,
not me.
One, what do we want to? I'm not going to care to ask the question about like the world that you want to see, but it's like, what are we willing to sacrifice to get to the more connection that we want? Like, what are the things that you believe are required to sacrifice in your level to get to the world that you're living and existing now, but the world that you want to see for your children moving forward?
What am I not willing to sacrifice? I mean, that's the thing, like, I mean, honestly, that in Islam, like, martyrdom is the highest form of, like, I mean, people know this about Islam because it's like, you know, the jihadists make sure people know it, but martyrdom is the highest form of just spiritual practice, to lay your life down for a cause that is a godly cause. But I don't even get into that because I've already sacrificed so much. Like, that's the thing, is that, like, you know, both of us, like, nobody's living their ideal luxurious life. I had to decide, I mean, I worked at a bank at a point, and that was me, like, can you work at a bank and be fundamentally anti-capitalist? Like, no. Was working at a bank like cushy as all hell? Yeah. It's like, you want the black card, you want to be in that life. I mean, it's me, you know, not pursuing some vanity bullshit. Like, I could have had positions at CNN. Like, I was offered so many different, you know, I could talk all day in front of a camera and get all made up and be like a mouthpiece for somebody else's ideas. Like, I've sacrificed so much comfort and personal comfort. I mean, I didn't stay with niggas that loved me, genuinely loved me, because I was like, damn, this is making me so complacent. I can't, like, we live in this made up world where everything is comfortable and you're always here for me and you bring me ad infinitum, like, money, clothes, food. Like, this is not the real world. Like, the real world is where I achieve myself. I've left irreality. That's what I sacrifice. I sacrifice irreality, and I sacrifice ignorance, and it is bliss. And it was easier not knowing. And I sacrificed childhood. Some white women, they're never not innocent. They get to be innocent their whole lives. I sacrifice innocence. I sacrificed innocence. I moved to a hard place. I'm not in the suburbs. I'm in the streets for real. Like, you know, it's like I don't think of it as sacrifice. I'm not counting my losses because like I said earlier, I spent too much time. And I say in that struggle episode, I spent too much time asking why me? Yeah. And I'm finally saying, why not me? To everything. When I think of a better world, someone to lead it, I say, why not me? When I think of all the fucked up shit that's happening, I'm like, why not me? Who should it have happened to? A darker skinned person? Someone with shorter hair? Someone with, you know, more weight on them? Like, who the fuck deserved what I got? Nobody deserved it, so why not me? Like, I'm counting it up and I'm counting it all joy. I'm like, I'm so deep in that struggle that I'm not looking at it as what can't go. There's like a Lauryn Hill line where she says, if everything must go, then go. Because I gotta know the truth. I gotta know the truth. And I know when I find it, it'll make me free. Because so many truths have already done so. I know it. So I'm Gucci. I'm good.
Love you, man. I love you, woman. This is like, I love you, man. Like, I love the way you speak. I love the force. I love the intention and the follow through more than anything else. You know, I'm not giving them any more free jewelry off of you. You already got your chains. You probably didn't get 2,000 chains in this conversation.
I'm just gonna like, you made me dress up. Like, I know I saw you guys are like black men. Y'all always just come with the full force. I'm like, let me not give them everything. Shit, I'm like, I gotta have a talk show. It's like, my producers don't give them everything. I'm like,
nah, I mean, to me, it's like your show is gonna be completely different, way better than this. But I'm just simply saying, we are getting.
No, honestly, it probably won't, because the thing is like, once money gets into anything, speaking freely is so, you know, I'm probably not gonna call white people talentless on my show. And there's a few Italian Americans that I still believe are black fundamentally, who are very talented white people. I guess they're white. Like, Robert De Niro's not really white to me. But
Robert De Niro is one of my favorite actors. He's like,
okay,
period. He did Bronx Tale. He did Casino. Casino's my second favorite of all time.
You can't really tell me shit. Most Italian American actors, like even like Joaquin Phoenix, you can't really tell me. I'm like, white, I guess. I'm like, I guess.
Stop it.
Yeah, I know that they love black women.
There will be no Robert De Niro slander.
That's why I'm like, I guess they're white, but you know, well, Italians just became white like 10 minutes ago, so we'll give them that. But like, yeah, it's just me being like, there's probably things I won't say. So I always enjoy and appreciate permission to speak freely, because you know, it often gets, it's like finally at a point in my life where it's like, it's bringing me better things than it is getting me into trouble. Because the whole beginning of my life, it did nothing but bring me trouble.
I'm genuinely trying to get in some good trouble with this shit.
Yeah.
I really would like to get in some good trouble. I want somebody unexpected to stumble across this and hear you just talking like that real shit, that raw sauce, and being like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
They're really having their whole shit blown up from it.
That's the thing. I'm only trying to, as much as I am in this struggle, I'm only trying to be in struggles that breed real purposefulness. And I think that is the notion of good trouble. It's like something that means something that lends to something else. Like, I've been on so many roads that went nowhere that I'm over that. I'm over that.
I needed this conversation today. It's like, particularly
I needed it too.
There's still like, you know, I'm 32 now. You're 20. You're about to be 24, and it's like there's something, at least from my perspective, about that. The fact that you haven't even engaged in the foolishness that I have from a corporate perspective, like you knew it was like this fuck this shit. And I remember the moment when I was around your age, and if someone was like, yo, we're gonna fucking either fire your ass or you have to accept the full-time job. I remember that conversation, and I was like, well, fuck it then. And then the next day I was like, shit, it's either that or like I'm never gonna leave my mom's house. And you know, just kind of went with that decision. And I remember that moment, and like I know the pitchfork in my life where I chose comfort, or I chose the more like the road more taken, more paved, more stones than the one that was going to be a little bit bumpy, but it would have gotten me to my destiny. And I don't regret anything, because I'm super happy and comfortable with it. As a person internally, I'm fucking Gucci, as you said. Like, I'm the Superman of my fucking story, and can't nobody tell me shit. However, the external world about the other times and other places I spend my time with, that has to be deleted. And like, I know for a fact that the conversation that we have this time next year, when we revisit this after our third or fourth conversation, it's going to be a different story for both of us. And, you know, like that commitment, I completely believe, like, just I've only found, as I wrote in this book, plug it again. I've only found
It was an eye opener for me.
I've only found success in struggle. Like the struggling part is the easy part. The purpose is what I had to find, and I have that purpose. You know, and maybe it's been clear to other people what my purpose may have been, but it took me a while to find it. You know, I never.
But I think of your purpose, like I said, it is just to be who you are to the fullest extent that's required, and to not be anyone else or not let anyone deter you from what is fundamentally you. So the things that you have to submit to, that you have to change, but to lay down who you know you are. And that's the thing, is that it's why I'm so keen on talking to children, because they're always like, when will I know? How will I become? And it's like, this is who you are.
Yeah.
Like really, like they're like, you're uncultivated. And in a lot of ways for Black kids, it's like you're unprotected. But when you're cultivated and you're protected at a point, you're gonna know like that this was always who you are. And it's, for me, like the book I'm writing now about running from girlhood, trying to become what I thought was myself. And then all of a sudden realizing like that person that was like so energetic and wanted truth and was caring and generous to like old people when I was a kid, and was like quiet and reserved, but also thoughtful, and was like an all-A student, like I was never gonna leave that person. Like that was who I was, and she deserved better. That's what it was. And like womanhood was giving her better so that she could fully explain herself and fully go out and be herself and be and cuss and do and love people and like fall in love with boys and be like romantic and put on lipstick and like dress up. And it wasn't changing. I was just, people, I don't know if they change. I think that they just become more of who they are. And that's what I figured out. And I'm just trying to become more of myself. And I'm trying to see myself for who I really am outside of the distractions and projections and socializations and indoctrinations that I've experienced, to really just pull back the mirror at like 82 and say, there it is. Yeah. There it is. Like that makes sense. That makes sense to me. It's simple. It makes sense to me. Because even with the looks, it's like we're beautiful people. And like one day when even the looks go, we'll be more of who we are. Because even this is a distraction and like something that we have to manage every day. I have to manage myself. I'm like more conservative than I appear half the time, because I'm like out in the world and I'm dressing a certain way and presenting a certain way. And then I'm like, damn, like that's not really who I am. Like I'm quite like, don't look at me. But I'm living in this body that I have to live in, you know? So it's like all of these things, you're just becoming more of who you are. And it's good, the path that you've taken, because now you know the consequences, and in that you can teach and like you can be available for the children. And young Black men need it more than anyone needs it, more than young Black girls need it. And we have this whole last 20 years of being like, educate girls and send girls to school and treat girls how you treat boys. And I find that young Black men have been there during the pandemic. Unemployment of Black men has increased more than any other demographic in this country. Nobody cares. Yeah. So it's like, it's up to us and young Black men who know and who have been there at that crossroads to go back and extend yourself and say, don't buy it. Don't buy it, I bought it. Don't buy it. And don't and embrace that world and don't let it go. And I know you will. I know you will, because that's who you are. It's like you're a lover through and through. That's why I'm like, buy the book, buy the book. I've said to every Black man I know, I'm like, I need to buy a few more copies, because I'm like, shit, like, yeah, actually, no, I'm gonna buy another copy because my friend's birthday's coming up, and I'm gonna be like, here you go, 27.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And you know, the thing that when you talk about the kids and just myself in that perspective, I think really what I realized was happening was, I think this is a function of capitalism, particularly nowadays, how like your life becomes your job, which is weird, or they don't give you, I had no time. I can't explain to you, I literally had to quit my job. I had to quit my job and run away for 3 months just to have time to fucking think. And it wasn't like, oh, I could have did it here. I literally needed to get away. Because I mean, I didn't have a fucking family, I would never do that. But it's just like, I need to get away to fucking like, can I take a breath? You're just working 16, 18 hours a day, working fucking weekends. You literally just so task oriented. Like you never had a time like, how do I feel? What do I want? Am I going to where I want to go? Am I feeling the things that I want to feel? Am I spending the time with the right people I want to spend with? Do I even have time to spend on myself? Do I have time to think? Do I have time to eat? Do I have time to nourish? Do I have time to think about, health, mental health, et cetera, et cetera? And it's like those things were just taken away from me. And I didn't realize how pervasive it was. It was like, oh, you got to work a little bit longer that day. You got to work a little bit longer that day. Oh, here's a project that's coming up. Here's another project that's coming up. I got 3 projects on my plate. And it's like, here's the timeline when it's due. And it's like, shit, this all this can't get done in that short period of time. Yeah, whether they tell you or not, it's like, yeah, you're gonna have to work extra to get it done. Okay, I can't, well, that's like weekends. And that's how it creeps into you. It's just like this creeping erosion of life and a more like focus on the tasks of hand and not the tasks of life.
And it costs too much. It costs, and that's the thing when you ask me what I've sacrificed, like I live below my means. Mm-hmm. Like I mean, people are just like I have such expensive taste. And it's just like, we both do. It's one of those things that's like, I'm gonna always have to, not always, not even for even a bit more time, but I've had to sacrifice so much of like what seemed like luxury and material things so I could have the luxury of time. Yeah. Because I really do give it away to other people as much as possible. Because the thing is, if I was working a 9 to 5, I would have just been getting off 5 minutes ago. And it's like to think that I would have been able to be in the right mind state to be present and available for even this conversation is like a joke. Like it's hard, if not completely impossible. And it was really me being like, I'm pulled towards this now. And I think that's what it is that you had to be in that world and you had to establish yourself and you had to see yourself go through that. And now you're being pulled into a world that it's like, this is what is really required. This is what really needs me. And like, that's where I am now. It's like, we couldn't be here if we were so into that world. It's really fucked up. Like it is all about time. And that's why I'm like, it needs to be smaller. Like things need to be more immediate. I think that those big dreams of like 10-bedroom houses and all that, it kills a lot of people. Like it kills a lot of people and they wake up and then you're supposed to retire or something, which that concept I don't even really understand. Is like, I'm not trying to retire from shit.
I want to live until I'm done, done living.
You retire, and then by then you don't even have any of the nice things about youth. Like you don't even. People are finally waking up. I think even like my young white rich friends who just like have entered the workforce, nobody's buying it anymore. Like nobody wants to just work and work and work and then wake up one day at like 55, 60, 70 years old and be like, like now I can enjoy the next 15 years of my life. Like my best friend's grandmother worked at a hospital for decades and decades and decades. And she retired in December and then she passed away a few weeks later. She retired in November and passed away. It's like,
no, that's not happening.
Had a retirement party and everything. Had no clue. Like, and it's just not, it costs too much.
Like it costs
too much.
I can't even say it's a cost because there's no price on what you're losing compared to what they're giving you. Like forget a salary, forget a wage.
But they do price it out. That's what's so crazy. They price it.
The idea of someone saying this is what I get per hour for my life, like whatever. I don't want to get into that whole.
I don't even get into it because we know, but
you can pay me what my hour's worth. Like.
Yeah, it costs too much. Well, actually, once somebody did, and I was like, well, I'd say once in my life, exactly once, earlier this year, I had a speaking engagement, and it was $6,000 for 20 minutes. And I said, you know what?
That's close.
I said, you know what?
That's about close.
I'm like, maybe Jeff Bezos is probably the only person on earth that gets adequately paid per hour to be like $27 million a minute. It's like, okay, but that's
closer.
Inconceivable. It's inconceivable and it's ludicrous. It has to be absurd in order to make any sense. Because even I'm sitting here and I'm like, 20 minutes? I actually stayed in the room longer. I lingered in the fucking room until I saw an hour hit the clock because I was like, there's no way that actually made that I could do that for 20 minutes. And and now I'm kind of like, shit, well, after you paid that, you really don't want to work.
That's what I'm trying to say. But low key, you gave them a discount by a lot. But
listen,
I know for a fact, I know after this, I owe you like a fucking small, like,
money. Nikki Giovanni, she gets paid $10,000 an hour, like for her speaking engagements. But it's like that makes some fucking sense.
I know for a fact I owe you a couple of stacks after this. Like this is like your time.
I'm like, Oprah, like people get paid. Like some people really are. It's like maybe the people that are like considered the most, they're the only people actually getting properly paid, like properly compensated. And the thing is I remember working at American Apparel and like, you know, grinding out on the retail thing. And I never even paid attention to hourly wages because I would truly be like, this is bullshit. Like, there's no raise they could have given me that would have made any goddamn sense. It was just survival. And the minute that something else is available to you, you gotta take it because it costs too much. It just costs too much. It costs much. I mean, Naomi Campbell, she would walk down the runway for $50,000 for like, you know, in total, Usain Bolt, he's run 3 minutes and 30 seconds his entire career. Gajillionaire. But it's like, he's like per hour? What's that man make per hour? Like,
I mean, he earned a whole lot when nobody was watching, though. That's the thing about it.
He's one of the richest people on earth when you're talking about efficiency for form. But it's because it's for who you are. You know what I'm saying? And that's like where you get to that point. That's the dream, to be like, they're not paying me that much because it's like, oh, per hour. But it's really like for who's standing in front of you, for what they're doing, for what they're accomplishing. And that's the dream, to get paid what you're worth in that sense. You're worth what people see you and say, that's somebody that what they're doing is worth something. And it's just like, you know, and for athletes, we won't even get into if they're overpaid or underpaid. It's just a matter of fact, it's like everyone is underpaid in this country. Everyone except for 10 people is like grossly fucking underpaid.
Exactly, and that's the point that people fail to realize. Like everyone's underpaid. Like people's worrying like who's making 10, who's making 15. We're all under fucking paid.
I was getting paid $50 an hour. I was fucking underpaid. I was
underpaid,
like,
bro.
I was like, because for the amount of humiliation, it's like, no.
And best believe that the more money you get paid, the more people expect from you, and the more they're going to take.
Oh, exactly. So,
I refuse raises because I knew that somebody thought they owned me more. Nah, I like my freedom. I'm good. I don't want it.
Yeah.
I'll take a bonus. I'll take a bonus, but I don't want you to increase my salary.
And that's really for Black people, because we know that there's like, I mean, there's that Chris Rock stand-up where he talks about living next to a dentist. And
yeah,
like how it's just like white people, they're secretly funny. But that was the thing, when I made that much, I was literally sitting here like, damn, like, I'm glad I'm not famous. I'm glad nobody knows about this. I'm gonna tell everybody, because I'm like, then they're gonna look at the context of the speech and be like, was it a good? It doesn't fucking matter.
I gotta be real with you. Like you said, I'm not joking. I don't feel like you didn't give him a discount. Like that seems cheap to me. Like there will be a time
It was. That was the thing, and it was a really big moment of recontextualization, because I've been doing everything I've ever dreamed of doing. I've done for free. If I told you that the Times paid me when I first got there $0, and then $150 an article, it was a joke. It was a joke.
Yeah.
Everything that's ever been of impact, Ask, Viv, all these things, $0. It's never brought me any money, but it's not the point. Like, that's the thing. And for me, it was funny to see someone finally put a price on my work. Like when I joined the Speakers Bureau, because I was like, shit, I guess if you were to price it out, it would kind of come to something crazy like that. Like, because I never thought, when you do something for free forever, and I do it for free to maintain that amount of quality, and these were people that genuinely like, whatever, speak about whatever you want, just make sure it's for 20 minutes, then you never actually really do think about when the time comes what it would cost, you know? And now it's way higher than that. Like, if I really was to think about it.
And you, of course, that's a fact. Like, it's way higher now, but you do realize, like, you've been putting in millions of dollars, millions, if not billions of dollars of value into your existence, into your thoughts, your mind, the things that you've read, how you summarize your thoughts, your innate talent. Like,
and that would work out.
It's like, it's really not about like the minutes that you've run, like you saying the Usain Bolt example, or like the 20 minutes that you're on stage. It's really about the fucking 24 years that you've been on this fucking earth, doing and trying and struggling and suffering.
Every day, you know, because I don't clock out.
All the seconds that you put in matter. Like,
I tell people, you either have a 9 to 5 or a 24. Like, that's it. Like, never clock out. Like, I'm after this, I'm gonna have to go work out. It's like it's a composite. Everything is like, But that's the thing. You also see like home videos of Beyonce at like 3 years old performing in front of her family, and it's just like all that shit before she ever, you know, put that accent over her name and crawled across those letters in 2003, Crazy in Love, VMAs. Like there was a whole world of work that went into that person that it's like she'll never get paid for that time. But it's like, you know, the time comes, I believe it, and I believe that for myself. I believe that.
Absolutely will happen.
I believe it. It's like it's an inevitability. Because I know it's an inevitability because I'm never gonna stop. Exactly. So it's like either I die and then I get paid my ultimate worth in like my level in heaven, or like I get paid I get paid here.
Or just both, which is likely to happen anyway.
It's both. It's literally both. And that's what I'm just like, I'm here. I'm here and I'm available to my destiny, you know? And I'm like so glad that we had this conversation.
Give me something for the end. Like I'm beyond thrilled about the conversation that we had. But give me something for the end. Give us a house tour. Give us something intimate. Give us something small.
Oh my God!
You gotta at the end. You gotta share something. You gotta share something.
I'm reading this.
Ooh.
I'm reading Lucille Clifton's "Blessing the Boats." So maybe I'll read a poem from it.
Please,
I'm like, I literally haven't barely started reading it. So, let me find something. I literally love Lucille Clifton. I literally haven't read enough of this to even decide on something. Oh, you know what I could do? I could read you a poem of mine.
Yeah, do that.
I've never done that.
Do that. Yeah, do that. I like that. That's even better.
Let me think what I could read. Oh, I love doing this poem, Con Man. Okay. I'll do that. Mm-hmm. I watch the skies for omens. What a false prayer, thinking we control men, especially the con man. Come on, man. Oh, wait, let me start over. Just cut it out. I feel like I haven't been performing so long.
Nothing's being cut, but we accept it. Go ahead, Queen.
Huh?
I said nothing's being cut, but we accept it. Go ahead, Queen.
Okay. I watch the skies for omens. What a false prayer, thinking we control men, especially the con man. Come on, man. He's the con man, not kind, patient, nor forgiving. On his best days, he's the con man. On his worst, he's just some nigga. Go figure. Card trick disappearing acts, that's his specialty. Leave him high and love him low without apology. Nicknames his lovers Grace, Ace, Peaches, Freedom, all respectively. And then in his con man voice, he says, girl, stop caging me. Ain't that how it be? How unforgiving love can be. By the time that he's reached safety, you done fall in 10 feet deep. You should have known when con man plays, the con man never plays for keeps. And still I know, but it's in vain that I still keep fighting fate, hoping one day he meets sacrifice and returns what he takes. Or maybe one day I get good at cards and beat him at the game, but win or lose the game, it always hurts the same when you're the con man. My mother calls me prideful, says to name you a mistake, count my losses, dry my tears, take my blessings, walk away, but mama, it ain't that easy. What am I supposed to say? I made my bed for fools to lay in, strung the guitar of the music man and got mad he started playing, fucked an alley cat and got mad that he went straying, laid down with a whore, lay down with a dog, then got pissed he wasn't bathing. Kissed a whore goodnight, then got sad she asked for payment. Wrote a sonnet to a poet, yet he still replied in layman's. Let thieves in at night and in the morning, ask them if they're staying. I even had the nerve to ask if they want eggs or bacon. So of course when con man came, I gave him bread and bed to lay in. You see what I'm saying? It's a cycle and it's dangerous, making love to strangers, bathing in hot water just to cure my cold anger. Mama, it ain't that easy to just make amends with the past, to just cure myself of holy water as if I ain't stained glass, to say what's done is dead, admit it had no meaning, to say the love was in my head, admit that he was scheming, it was all just a con man. Come on, man. No way. If I don't get my cut, somebody's getting cut. Somebody's got to pay. Because the con man ain't the cash man. He won't pay for his mistakes. He won't say that he is sorry nor admit that he's mistaken. You con me out my shit, don't make it yours, just makes it taken. Maybe I'm the token, maybe I'm the prey, maybe I was dollars short and ever a day late. Maybe someone told you they'd be coming back and so foolishly you stayed and you became the con man, thinking there's no other way than to fool this foolish world and to play for you get played. And well, it's better to have loved and lost. Well, that's some easy shit to say. And yes, you were the con man, but nigga, I loved you anyway.
Yeah.
I always forget how long that is. Like shit.
This is so good. Yo, thank you.
Like I'm butchering it. Thank you, Greg.
No, that was like, God, I really can't put into words like how. Just thank you. Like
it's always love. I'm like, this is your living room feels like the most welcome space I've been in a while.
It's just so rare in life where people feel like, well, I feel like at least where it's just like you're in the presence of like pure humanity, uncut soul, like uncut life. Like you are truly an angel among us, like without question, an angel, a blessing to us all. And I'm
gonna take that into the struggle for the next week. I'm gonna be thinking about this and share it with everybody.
I mean that wholeheartedly. Like I mean that. Like just every time I've met you, and we've had these periods of like hyper connections, and like we disappear to like re-up or like get some thoughts out, and then we come back. And every single time that you appear, it's always for me, a moment of inflection, a moment of growth, a moment of elevation. And you always come into my life, always resurfaced in a beautiful way. At a needed, beautiful moment. They've always provided strength, always provided hope, always provided grace, always provided inspiration. You are a motivation, seriously. And I just want to say thank you for existing, as always.
I want to say thank you. You know the feeling's ultimately mutual. I'm not nearly good at any kind of that. I'm always left ineloquent to say what my friends mean to me, but the work you're doing, keep doing it. I want to be like happy 50th episode. Yes. That's what I want. That's like, even if you take long, as someone who now is like about to celebrate 3 years of Ask Viv, and yet only 30 episodes in, I'm like, just don't stop. As long as you just don't stop. It's necessary, it's needed. And it's so funny because we're doing this now and you haven't even gotten like your structure or your flow because it's only 3. Yeah. Well, why should be like 30 and you literally have your microphone in your suit and you on your like Trevor Noah shit, but not corny or light skin. Like,
about it, like I know it's gonna grow, and then I know it's gonna have those little features to it. And I know all you gotta do is keep doing it. That's the beautiful thing about it. Like I know right now that in the future this is everything that I imagine to be, and even more. And it's just showing up every day.
When it's at the height of what you want to be, invite me back, and I'm like, I'm gonna. It's just gonna be even better. I'm like, invite me back with your structure, but I love being the prototype. I love being the guinea pig. It's like, it's such, when you told me, I was like, yes, and yes. Like 100,000% yes. So thank you. And yeah, I always say it even in my episodes, I'm like, whoever's this far into this shit, like, thank you.
Thank y'all, seriously.
Watching this, make sure to say thank you. It's like, thank you, whoever got to this part.
Of course, they're listening 2 hours plus into it. Thank you all, because I mean, it's great. I'm happy just to speak to you, but if anyone else is listening, like the fact that you guys are still here and rocking out with us, just thank you, because it's your ears and your intention and your like perseverance through all this shit with us is what's gonna get us to the next stage. And
it's all love.
It's all love.
I'm holler at you.
It's all love. All right, see you. Bye, y'all.